pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands, one
one
nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
In accordance with state statute, I have made a determination that it was not practical or prudent to schedule an in-person city council meeting because of the COVID-19 pandemic, which is why this April 5th, 2021 city council meeting is being held remotely. First order of business is report of city officers, comments by the mayor. I have a few comments tonight. The three main items on our agenda tonight highlight the increasing energy and vitality in our community. Despite the dark days of the past year, Lake Forest is flourishing. We have a red hot housing market that is showing no signs of slowing. We have new families and people of all ages and nationalities moving into our community. We have new housing options increasing within walking distance of the central business district. We have new construction occurring in subdivisions in various parts of town, a refurbished Westwood Square at the north end of the CBD, re-energizing that area, 5 new restaurants slated to open this month, a new commercial development that will soon be underway on the Waukegan Road corridor in the Waukegan Road Business District, a refreshed South Park that was filled with families over this last weekend. Expansions and upgrades are ongoing at our local institutions with a new science center and a major addition to Brown Hall at Lake Forest College, and continuing growth at our state-of-the-art Northwestern Memorial Lake Forest Hospital. The Forester, a one-of-a-kind boutique hotel, is opening next week. Parenthetically, I enjoyed having dinner there on Saturday night. The restaurant's opening on Wednesday, as I understand it. And now we have the opportunity to welcome Le Colonial, a well-known and well-loved restaurant nationwide, to our community. It's fascinating and fabulous to see all the investment that's happening and all the energy that is starting to come together. Additionally, there are exciting things afoot at Ragdale, one of the crown jewels among Lake Forest's many treasures. Major enhancements to Ragdale's facilities and programming are on the horizon, and we will be considering municipal support for these efforts to make this cherished institution even better. Importantly, everything I just mentioned is intertwined. As we bring more people to our city, and particularly to our central business district, we support existing businesses and attract new businesses. The more welcoming, lively, and prosperous downtown that is repeatedly identified as the most important improvement we could make to this amazing city is coming into view. So with that as an introduction, the first item on our agenda is consideration of a resolution approving a partial release of rights concerning property located at 655 Forest Avenue, the location of the former Market House restaurant. Kathy Cerniak will make a brief presentation about this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Bear with me one moment. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. The first item on your agenda pertaining to Le Colonial is a request from the current property owner, Carla Westcott, for a waiver of the right of first refusal. When the city initially sold this property, you all may know that this building formerly was the fire station and police station. When the city initially sold it, the city reserved a right of first refusal and the right to review any exterior changes, recognizing the significance of this building, its historic importance, and its location at the corner of Market Square and immediately across the street from City Hall. You do have the document, the waiver of release, in your packet for your consideration. If you choose to do so, it would be approval through a resolution. Before you do that, I wanted to provide a little bit of background information. The city's Historic Preservation Commission heard the proposal to consider modifications to the entrance to Le Colonial, the addition of awnings, signage, and considerable upgrades to the patio. the Historic Preservation Commission granted a certificate of appropriateness and reserved some rights for a subcommittee to refine some of the remaining elements. The subcommittee met on site with representatives of Le Colonial, both the architect, representatives from the architectural firm, as well as the landscape firm, and resolved the remaining open issues, really gained a good understanding of the details of the proposed changes. In addition, subsequent to that, city staff, including our building inspectors and our plan reviewers, walked through the entire building space with representatives of the Le Colonial team and really got a good understanding of the very extensive alterations, upgrades, equipment replacement, and life safety work that Le Colonial has planned for the site. So that's a bit of background. I believe with the next item, Elizabeth Howell will bring up a PowerPoint that gives you a couple images. Just very quickly, you will see the new entrance that is proposed on Forest Avenue with the signage that is characteristic of this restaurant in their locations across the country, not only in Chicago, but also in New York City, Houston, Atlanta, and San Francisco. With that, I will turn it back to you, Mr. Mayor. If the council chooses to do so, it would be appropriate to approve the resolution authorizing the mayor to sign the waiver of first right of refusal, which also confirms that the city process is complete on approval of the exterior improvements.
Mr. Mayor, I think you're muted.
Sorry. Thank you, Kathy. I would entertain a motion to approve a resolution granting a partial release of rights for property located at 655 Forest Avenue and authorize the mayor to sign the partial release of rights, Exhibit A to the resolution, in substantially the form presented.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Well, wait, can we ask a few questions first, a few clarifying questions? Yes?
I think if there's a motion on the table, should we stop that?
Well, generally, after a motion is seconded is generally the time for discussion, but you can do
Okay,
general discussion before that. Yeah, I just wanted, I wanted on the record, when I first read this proposal, I just wanted to be sure that the right of first refusal, if there is a new tenant to this building, that it springs back into being. So maybe Julie could discuss that a little bit.
Yes, it should be clear from the document that it's a partial release. So there's language in here that makes it very clear that you're releasing it. If you approve this, you're releasing it to allow this sale, but any subsequent sale, and that is in the document. Yes.
Right. Thank you. I just wanted that in the record. And also, I wonder if Kathy can talk a little bit about what things were worked out with that special commission or special committee that was appointed. What were some of the issues and how were those resolved, just to enlighten us a little bit?
Sure, it was really an opportunity for two members of the Historic Preservation Commission to meet on site and understand the details of the entrance proscenium. We actually walked off the distance, understood how it will be set back from the sidewalk. There were no significant changes, but really the opportunity to walk around the building, understand its existing condition. One of the things we observed is that although you wouldn't notice it from passing by on a daily basis, the building currently is various tones. It's been painted over time. So there were no material changes. It was really an opportunity to understand colors. Samples were provided when we met, samples of the awning, samples of the paint color. So it was really understanding the specifics of what was proposed.
Thank you.
Any other questions Comments? Okay, I guess we can go to the roll call vote.
Alderman Morris,
Aye.
Alderman Karas,
Aye.
Alderman Rommel,
Aye.
Alderman Notes,
Aye.
Alderman Preschlack,
Aye.
Alderman Gushgarian,
Aye.
Alderman Bushman,
Aye.
Alderman Weber.
Aye.
8 yea, 0 nay, motion carries.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is consideration of a request from the owners of La Colonial Restaurant for approval of a short-term financial incentive agreement rebating a portion of sales tax received by the city. This is also an approval by motion, and Director of Finance Elizabeth Hollab will present a few slides to describe the arrangement that's being proposed.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. Director Zerniak, did you have any other opening comments regarding the development before I get started on the incentive agreement?
No, I do not.
Okay, great. So as Kathy mentioned, you'll see in the slides a few of the rendering drawings related to the La Colonial Restaurant. And my slides will not advance. There we go. So as the mayor mentioned, this item on your agenda is consideration of a request from the owners of the La Colonial Restaurant for approval of a short-term financial incentive agreement that would rebate a portion of the sales taxes received by the city. In looking at the specific goals related to the incentive agreement presented this evening for your consideration, we wanted to recognize the unique nature of the planned improvements to the property as Director Zerniak outlined, and the unique nature of the anticipated sales volume being considerably more than other restaurants in Lake Forest currently. We also wanted to ensure that the city received the benefit of sales taxes generated by the new restaurant immediately, rather than postponing those a few years down the road. So as outlined in the incentive agreement presented for your consideration this evening, the incentive agreement would commence when La Colonial Restaurant is publicly open. So following all soft openings that they might engage in, once the restaurant is open to the public, the incentive agreement would begin. As you know, the sales tax rate in the city is 8%. Of that 8%, the city receives 2%, a 1% municipal sales tax and a 1% home rule sales tax. The other 6% of sales taxes going to other governmental entities in the state. Under the proposed incentive agreement, the city would receive the first $80,000 in sales taxes generated through the municipal and home rule sales taxes. So that would equate to a sales volume of $4 million annually. The incentive agreement would then call for 100% of those taxes, the 2% municipal sales tax and home rule sales tax, to be rebated to La Colonial Restaurant owners. The duration of the agreement would be the earlier of two events. First, the receipt of $200,000 in rebate by La Colonial Restaurant, or 4 years. So regardless of the rebate that would be generated, the incentive agreement as proposed would cease after 4 years. To give you some comparison to other restaurants within Lake Forest, I would note that we have specific prohibitions on release of sales tax data through the Illinois Department of Revenue. Therefore, I can only provide annual information. But for calendar year 2019, we had 17 Lake Forest standalone restaurants operating for the full 12 months of calendar 2019. The average sales volume of those 17 restaurants was 1.4 million, with the average municipal sales tax, home rule sales taxes generated of approximately $28,000. So it is by design an incentive agreement that is intended to be unique, and again, recognize the significance of the proposed restaurant by La Colonial. So I'll be happy to answer any questions from the City Council regarding the proposed agreement.
Questions for Elizabeth?
Hi, this is Alderman Preschlack, Mr. Mayor. I don't have any questions. I just really want to applaud the creativity of the staff in terms of how this has been framed, and I think it's really well thought through, and I'm in support of it. So thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, I have a point I'd like to bring up. I just want to express my appreciation to the Laconia team for choosing Lake Forest to come after their presence in all those major cities. So that's particularly encouraging. And I also wanted to thank Carla Westcott for the many years of support that she's provided for the restaurant up until now. So it was very helpful that she took that on and maintained the restaurant as well as she did. And it was a big boost for Lake Forest when it started. And now we have a new venture to appreciate. So thank you to everybody.
Thank you, Alderman Morris. Any other questions or comments? I guess I would like to point out one thing that Kathy alluded to that is an important feature of this arrangement, and that is a fairly large percentage of the total investment that the team here is proposing to make in the building is going to go into the infrastructure of the building that Kathy touched on. It's of necessity, but it's going to set this building up, you know, this historic building up for another century of health and welfare that is never guaranteed with these historic buildings. So that's an important distinguishing feature here, and not every other restaurant operator that comes to town is willing or able to do anything like that. So we certainly are excited about the whole package. And so with that, I would call for a roll call vote, please.
Can we have a motion and a second?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we already did that.
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
Alderman Morris,
Aye.
Alderman Karas,
Aye.
Alderman Rommel,
Aye.
Alderman Notes,
Aye.
Alderman Preschlack,
Aye.
Alderman Gashgarian,
Aye.
Alderman Bushman,
Aye.
and Alderman Weber.
Aye.
8 yea, 0 nay, motion carries.
All right. Well, thank you, Biddy. And we have an honored guest here who would like to say a few words. Joe King, who's the partner in charge of this part of the operation for La Colonial, and Joe and his partner have been working closely with the city and with Carla Westcott and with the folks that are buying the building over really since last summer to make this a reality, and we're right on the doorstep. So Joe, welcome. Happy to see you. You're muted.
There we go. How's that?
You're on.
All right. Thank you so much, Mayor. I would just want to say every step of the process so far in Lake Forest has been so fantastic. We've been so well cared for by the mayor and the mayor's office and everybody. Carla's like fantastic as the owner. She's been wonderful. Kathy, what more can I say about Kathy? Kathy's terrific. Jason, and you know, it has been a great beginning, and we're looking forward to really great things in Lake Forest. And we think it's a beautiful community. And just listening to you speak here today, I mean, everyone seems so kind and gentle. And I'm thrilled to be coming to Lake Forest and look forward to getting to know all of you. So thank you. I wanted to know, did anybody have any type of questions or anything that they wanted to ask me about the restaurant or any issues at all?
Oh, give us the correct pronunciation.
Well, it is not lake. It's pretend you're French and you have a little bit of an attitude. Le. It's like an LE or an LU, but it's we've been called Le Colonel, and we've been called many things, but a lot of people call it Le Colonial, and it's just Le. You know, I love Lake Forest.
Right, but it is,
Singular, not plural.
right,
Right.
but it's colonial, not colonial.
Le Colonial.
Exactly, right.
Yeah, it's one like little flowing flowing for it. So
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would love to know how you identified Lake Forest as an opportunity for your business.
You know, I have to tell you, we've been here for 25 years in the city of Chicago, and I've had the opportunity to go to other areas in, excuse me, in the North Shore, and Lake Forest is sort of the epicenter. You've got Highland Park and Lake Forest and Lake Bluff, and there's been, as the mayor had mentioned earlier, a tremendous movement of people, I think, out of the cities and into Lake Forest. And our clientele is there. I think the overwhelming majority of your population has, at some time or another, been to the restaurant, or a lot of the people have. And it's the clientele that I think is that serves La Colonia very well. And I think it's going to be a perfect fit. I also think there's not that many, larger scale restaurants. I think it's a good thing for Lake Forest, and I think it will be a very good thing for us. And I hope you all love the cuisine, because, I sure do. After all these years, I'm still eating it. Having it tonight for dinner. So,
Can't speak for everybody, but I'm pretty sure we're all equally enthused.
Right.
Welcome, yeah.
great.
Hey, Joe, this is Jim Preschlack. I just had a question that's probably on everybody's mind. And so are you on time and on schedule? And I guess, when do you anticipate opening up and, to the community?
Well, we're moving quickly as we can. It's a big building. It's going to take a tremendous amount of work inside just to get ready to begin the building process. So what has been so fantastic is that the meeting that we had with the building inspectors, they love our plan, because we don't put a Band-Aid on things. We take it down and we start from scratch. And they were very happy to hear about some of the pipes in the basement, because they know the building very well. And we are going to start, I think the closing is scheduled for the 7th. I will be taking down light fixtures and doing some work on the 8th. And we were hoping, we're going to probably need a couple of days to remove the things that we need to remove. We have a move out on the 13th of some furniture and fixtures, because we're going to have to do a lot of demo. That'll take a full day. And then I think the new landlord will need about a week to move things out that we don't want. And then we're hoping we're going to have the demo numbers by the end of this week. And we think that we'll probably start on the 26th of April, I hope. With the permits ready to go, we'll be in good shape. No, I think we'll start on the 26th. It will take 6 weeks for demo. We should finish up, we hope, around the 7th of June and start building. So by late January or February, we hope next year, you will all be having spring rolls for dinner. I hope. Well, certainly you'll all be invited to the friends and family before, so you'll know what the spring rolls taste like. You can just go spread the word and tell your friends.
That's great. Thank you.
So that's it. We're going to push hard. It's a big project. It as you're taking apart an old building. The things that you're going to, the surprises that we might run into. You never know what might delay you a little bit, but we're going to move hard and fast to try to get it open as soon as possible.
How many other locations do you have in Illinois?
La Colonia, only the one.
Just the one. Okay.
Yep.
And
New York,
how,
San Francisco, Houston, Atlanta, soon to be 2 in Illinois, and then we've got a couple of others in Florida.
so would it be fair to say that we're sort of your first suburban location?
It would be very fair to say that, yes.
Well, that's very exciting, and I hope everybody hears that loud and clear, that your market study must have shown you that this was the right place for a restaurant of your prestige. So that's wonderful news. Thank you.
I think Lake Forest would be very good for La Colonia. I really think it'll be a great location. And it is the first. It's, honestly, when you're doing something that you haven't done before, you're always a little nervous about that. We lost our lease after 23 years on Rush Street, and we moved to Oak Street. So we were on the first floor, and we had a sidewalk cafe, and now we're on the 3rd floor, and we have no sidewalk cafe. So I was beside myself, even though Mark Nauer is a genius in terms of design, and he's wonderful to work with. It's like, okay, we're going up to the 3rd floor. I hope you're really good, but he is, and people have loved it. And he's really been terrific, and he has a big part in us coming to Lake Forest himself. So he's the one that introduced us because he lives out there to this opportunity. So thank you, Mark Nauer, for being the man that made it happen. But yeah, it will be great, and looking forward to it. Summer's outside, beautiful bar. It's going to be a nice setup.
You'll be moving here in no time.
I've had some friends that have recently moved there. They've had their 2nd child, and they moved out of Chicago and into Lake Forest, and I love their house. And I'm thinking, I'm not getting any younger. It might be a nice idea to kind of get out of the city and spend some time where it's beautiful every day. So, speaking of beautiful, I'd like to find out what location those someone's at the beach with a beautiful lake behind them.
That's Biddy.
That's you, yes.
Thank you.
It reminds me of Maine. I spent a lot of time in Maine growing up, and it's there's nothing like the water and the dunes.
So, well.
Any other questions? I know you have a lot to get to, and you're probably dying to get rid of me, and I'll talk all night. So.
Any other questions or comments? All right, well, we're all very enthusiastic. I can speak personally to the extent that I've received emails. I don't think I got a single one that didn't say, you guys, if you don't do this, you're absolutely crazy. So.
Well, that's encouraging. And I just want to repeat, to come out there and to sit in your office and be treated just with kindness and civility, and it's been a great experience so far. And if it continues this way, it's just going to be great. And I'm
Great
sure
relationship. But we're looking forward to it for many years to come.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you all. I'll let you get to your business. I'll sign out. It's been great. Nice to meet you. I look forward to meeting you all in person. And when the COVID thing's over, I can get together and have some fun.
All right.
Take care.
Take care. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Mayor, I think you're muted again.
Right. I got the toggle on the wrong switch. Next item on the agenda is comments by the city manager. Any comments, Jason?
No, thank you, Mayor. I have no report tonight.
All right. Next item on the agenda is the opportunity for citizens to address the city council on non-agenda items. I'll note that we will have additional public comment later in the meeting. Members of the public can provide public comment by calling into the following number, the number that's on the screen, or by choosing the raise hand option on Zoom. So Joe, you've got the screen up. Let's wait a minute here and see if we have any raised hands or callers.
Mr. Mayor, we have no callers at this time.
Thank you, Layla.
Mr. Mayor, we have no raised hands at this time.
Okay, thank you. Then we will move on. We have no committee reports this meeting. So the next thing on the agenda is items for omnibus vote consideration. We have 9. First is approving the extension of the mayor's declaration of a local state of emergency until the next city council meeting. Second is approval of the March 15th, 2021 city council meeting minutes. Third is approval of the check register for the period of February 20 to March 19th, 2021. Fourth is approval of a resolution reallocating 2021 volume cap to the village of Buffalo Grove, Illinois. Number 5 is approval of right benefit strategies, benefit consulting services for fiscal year 2022 in the amount of $30,900. 6th is an award of bid for the Dickinson Hall kitchen renovation project in partnership with the Lake Forest Lake Bluff Senior Citizens Foundation to Baller Construction in the amount of $102,500, and including authorization for an additional $10,000 contingency and award of $3,800 to Colebrook Design for the architectural design for a total of $116,300. 7th is approval to use funds from the dissolved East Shore Radio Network and the approval of an intergovernmental agreement between the City of Lake Forest, the City of Highland Park, and the Village of Lake Bluff establishing the Lakeshore Radio Network. Number 8 is award of proposal to Slayton Construction for the Police Target Range Safety Upgrade Project in the amount of $166,782 with a 10% or $16,678 contingency for a total amount of $183,460. 9th is consideration of ordinances approving recommendations from the Building Review Board, first reading, and if desired by the City Council, final approval. Are there any of these items that any member of the council would like to be removed or taken separately? Okay, then I would entertain a motion to approve the omnibus items as submitted.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Alderman Morris,
Aye.
Alderman Karas,
Aye.
Alderman Rommel,
Aye.
Alderman Notes,
Aye.
Alderman Preschlack,
Aye.
Alderman Gushgarian,
Aye.
Alderman Bushman,
Aye.
Alderman Weber.
Aye.
8 yea, 0 nay, motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda, I'm going to switch the order a bit here and get to some new business before the old business. The next item I'd like to like us to consider is approval in concept of a request from the Ragdale Foundation to borrow $1.5 million from the city to be paid from pledge commitments over a 5-year period. Do we have a presentation on this from staff?
Thank you, Mayor Pandeleon. We are probably in the process of being joined also by Barbara Schuman and Fred Klein, representing the Ragdale Foundation. Continuing on the opening comments the mayor made at the beginning of the meeting, there is a lot of exciting activity going on at Ragdale. As you know, the Ragdale Foundation operates on city-owned property. And so improvements to the Ragdale Foundation property clearly benefits the city. In 2011, the city made a loan of $2 million to the Ragdale Foundation to support improvements that Ragdale made to the main house. And that loan was paid back to the city with interest. Ragdale is in the process now of a $6 million capital campaign to do a number of projects on the Ragdale property, one of which is the new music and dance studio, which is currently under construction at Ragdale. Many of those pledges that come in as part of the capital campaign are long-term in nature. And so in March, Barbara Schuman, on behalf of the Ragdale Foundation, submitted a letter of request to the mayor, which was included in your packet, seeking a $1.5 million loan at a 2% interest for 5 years by the city to the Ragdale Foundation to support those pledge commitments that would be received over the next 5-year period. The action taken by the City Council this evening is simply to approve that loan in concept. Those documents and a closing date on the loan would come back for City Council approval at a later date. But the Ragdale Foundation wanted to ensure that the City Council was supportive of the loan so that they could continue with their campaign planning. I would be happy to answer any questions regarding the request, but certainly both Barbara and Fred are available as well.
Questions from the council? Alderman Rommel.
Yes, can you just talk a little bit about the collateral that is being offered and the availability of that collateral should there be a default? I think that's to Director Holla, but or whomever.
And Barbara and Fred can add, but they have endowment funds in two particular locations. Those endowment funds were pledged as collateral on the first loan. They do have restrictions, but the Ragdale Foundation was able to secure approval to have those funds collateralize the loan in the event of non-payment. The request letter presented to the mayor in March and included in your packet asked that the council only require the William Blair endowment funds of 1 to 1.1 million currently be pledged as collateral, and then to offer the pledge commitments as security for the remaining principal balance of the loan. So under that design, the city would seek and Ragdale Foundation has committed to providing a quarterly report to the city regarding pledge commitments and pledge payments received, so that the city would have an ongoing review opportunity to ensure that those pledge commitments are indeed intact and available to make the loan payments over the 5-year period. Barbara, Fred, would you want to add anything to that?
Thank you, Elizabeth. Just that so far we have received pledges that are now very close to $3 million on our $6 million campaign, which is very exciting for us because we're now in the private phase. We haven't gone to the public phase yet. So there's a tremendous amount of support from our usual donors and from people we are reaching. The William Blair account is an endowment account that Ragdale controls by ourselves. The Chicago Community Trust endowment account, which was set up by Alice Hayes, is not one that we control. We get quarterly distributions. So we don't have nearly as much flexibility with the Chicago Community Trust portion of our endowment. That does give us, though, much more flexibility with the William Blair account. As the City Council undoubtedly knows, because of the historical gifts and the operating agreement that exists between the city and Ragdale, the city is the owner of virtually all of the Ragdale property with a very minor exception. And we at Ragdale are really in the position of being the equivalent of a long-term lessee, although it's under an operating agreement, not a long-term lease. But we have full and complete responsibility for running Ragdale without seeking any help financially or otherwise from the city, which is the owner. When the current dance and music studio is completed, which we hope will be about October, we'll have 2 brand new studios, state of the art, and we will go through the necessary paperwork to then deed those improvements to the city of Lake Forest. The music and dance studio is largely being funded by the Morrison Shure Foundation, which has pledged $1.5 million. Ragdale will be raising and spending the balance that will be required to complete the studios. And that's part of the pledges that we're seeking and the loan that we're seeking from the city to assist us as we realize upon the pledges. Some people, as you can imagine, are making donations immediately. Some are doing it over 3 years, some are doing it over 5 years, which is why the loan from the city is so helpful to us, because then we can spend the money that we need to spend on the improvements now while the pledges come in over time. I'm happy to answer any other questions. Barbara, I've been a member of the Ragdale board since 2008. I'm also general counsel of the Ragdale Foundation, wearing another hat. Barbara is the president of the Ragdale board. Either of us would be happy to answer any question.
Well, as a follow-up to that, then, are you pledging, you're pledging whatever funds are in that account? Or you're pledging $1.1 million? You know, that, because I assume that that account, the value of it can fluctuate over time. So, you know, maybe enlighten me as to what exactly is being offered as collateral, or as these pledges come in, will you be putting them into this same account so that you know the value would get up to the full 1.5 million as collateral, or you know, and then what's the thought there?
We're pledging the account, and as you can imagine, it's a conservatively invested account. We're not investing in penny stocks. So it does fluctuate as the market does, but we are mostly in equity, well, we have a mixture of equity and debt, but it's very conservatively invested through William Blair because we are a charitable foundation. So we are pledging that William Blair investment account, which, as Elizabeth said, is now about $1,040,000. When the pledges come in, they will not be going into the investment account. They'll be going into a separate account for the fundraising so that we can spend the money out of the pledges that we are realizing as we are going through the projects on the barn house and the garden and accessible pathways, and of course the music and dance studio and some other projects we're hoping to realize.
So I suppose to some extent we have a bit of a risk and hope that the market stays positive and that this account retains its value. You know, not that any of us would expect it not to, but I just want to understand the risk with this collateral. So, and I'm always very supportive of Ragdale. I was on one of your first women's boards, and you probably sat on the board with my husband, Mike Rummel.
Mike was one of my favorite board members.
Yeah, I go way back with Ragdale on a number of things, all the way before it was even Ragdale, and while Alice still owns the place, my kids used to play in the treehouse. So I have great feelings for Ragdale, but you know, as an alderman, we have to put on a different hat. So thank you for answering my question.
To Alderman Rummel's point, I would just add that the city does receive the statement for the William Blair account, a copy of that. And so we are able to track that balance. But I think that, as well as this quarterly report of pledge commitments, I hope will, you know, provide the city council comfort that there will be security backing the loan.
Elizabeth, this is Jim Preschlack. Can you talk a little bit about the incremental, I guess, interest that we get on the loan versus like parking cash in our traditional places? I mean, just what the vig is on the loan for us, just given that we're putting money to work, which I think is a pretty low and kind of risk investment. I mean, there's market risk, but you know, this is an entity that's embraced by the community. I mean, it's so well loved. You know, the kind of real risk is the pledge risk, and if they're not, you know, really focused in on kind of mission critical things that are important to our community. And I think they knocked the cover off the ball there. So I think we're getting a deal here. So, but if you could talk on that, I'd appreciate that. I think that's really the more salient point. So thank you.
Sure, absolutely, Alderman Preschlack. So the funds that would be used to provide this loan to the Ragdale Foundation is very strictly limited in how the city can invest. The city is not able to invest operating funds in equity investments. So we are really tied to the fixed income market at any given time. And as you know, rates are extremely low right now. And so this is really a win-win. So we can earn an interest rate higher than we would receive with these funds invested in bank deposit or certificate of deposit. So this is a benefit to Ragdale, hopefully a lower interest rate than they would see out in the commercial market, but also a benefit to the city.
I would just like to follow up on Jim's point. I'm pleased to see Ragdale continuing to make these investments and not allowing deferred maintenance to get the best of them and having to come back later and make even bigger investments. And the city's in great financial shape. So this is a good opportunity to make use of those funds to support a cherished nonprofit organization in Lake Forest. So, and I think it's a great opportunity for us to help out with Ragdale. So, thanks.
Alderman Bushman's got his
I
hand.
had a clarifying question if I could. Could you explain how the payout's going to occur? Is the 1.5 million going to be paid out immediately up front or as needed? And then what sort of payback schedule are we looking at on the 5-year loan?
So we have not worked out the specifics of the repayment, but if it looks like the former loan, this would be a $1.5 million loan over 5 years. So the Ragdale Foundation would make a $300,000 principal payment at the end of each of the loan period. As for the drawdown on the funds, my assumption is that it's immediate, but certainly if there is benefit to the Ragdale Foundation to delay, then we can certainly factor that in and provide them some savings on the interest side. The previous loan paid interest annually, I believe. So we would just receive an annual principal and interest payment.
Although the interest would be payable only on the amount outstanding if they didn't draw it down, totally at the front end.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for that information.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Okay, well, I would then entertain a motion to approve the proposal as presented.
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Alderman Morris,
Aye.
Alderman Karas,
Aye.
Alderman Rommel,
Aye.
Alderman Notes,
Aye.
Alderman Preschlack,
Aye.
Alderman Goshgarian,
Aye.
Alderman Bushman,
Aye.
Alderman Weber.
Aye.
8 yea, 0 nay, motion carries.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're
Thank you.
excited to see all the improvements that are underway and planned, and it's just a fabulous institution that just gets better and better. So as I said before, one of the crown jewels in a city full of treasures. So
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
okay, next item for discussion is under old business. It's consideration of a recommendation from the Plan Commission pertaining to various actions related to a proposed planned multifamily development, Phase 3 of the McKinley Road multifamily plan development.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I just want to comment. I would really like to participate in the discussion, but as before, I need to recuse myself because of my relationship with the petitioner on this matter.
Okay, I accept that with significant regrets.
Me too.
I have a little comment before we get started here. This project is the sort of culmination, as I touched on at the beginning, of a decade-long thought process, master plan, and vision for this immediate part of our town, of our downtown. It seems to check virtually all the boxes in the master plan, and it is a quality development. So I believe that these developers are owed a clear decision after 2 years, 6 public meetings, and significant changes to the building in response to feedback from the neighbors and the city. I believe that the elongated process that has occurred is largely the result of the developers making extraordinary efforts to be responsive. Historic Preservation Commission will still have an opportunity to have input on the design and historic aspects of this proposal. The fact is that we have heard what we need to hear from this exhaustive process. It is now the duty of the council to provide clear guidance. The project has been notably improved through all the back and forth, which is a credit to our established processes, to the boards, commissions, the developers, and the city staff who have acted with great patience and good faith thus far. It is a good, well-financed project. The Plan Commission, which I chaired for several years, and the Historic Preservation Commission operate within a specific purview with well-defined parameters. The Plan Commission is a recommending body with all final decisions left in the hands of the City Council. We certainly take input from boards and commissions very seriously, since they have the opportunity to probe the fine details of each specific project before making a recommendation based on the elements of the project that are within their unique purview. But their parameters do not include many aspects that are important to the citizens of Lake Forest. For example, financial considerations and the overall long-term best interests of the entire community rest with the City Council. In the end, the buck stops here. We need to make these decisions, and in my opinion, we need to make them now. So with that, I will open up for a review from Kathy Sanya.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I trust you can all see my screen. Yes.
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 Thank you. So this has been a long process. I don't want to spend time repeating, so I've tried to pick and choose what I will focus on tonight. Biddy, I'm having trouble advancing my screen.
Okay, just give me 1 second. You need to stop sharing.
Okay.
Whoop. I'm sorry. There we go.
Thank you. And you can advance it, please.
I'm trying.
Thank you.
Okay.
So just to orient everyone, we are talking about a property located close to the Central Business District on the east side of McKinley Road between Westminster and Deer Path. This property has been studied for a number of years. The current petition before the City Council is phase 3 of a larger development. Located in the entire development is the shaded area. The area outlined in red is the subject of tonight's discussion. Biddy, please advance the slide. Thank you. Tonight, I want to cover 5 topics, and I'll do that as briefly as I can. I want to review the process. I know we've all talked about the process before, but I do think it's important to talk about how did we get here. I want to focus on the phase 3 plan, both the current plan, but also provide a little bit of background on the evolution of this plan over a number of months. I want to refer to the evaluation criteria, standards, and parameters. I won't go into those in detail. The City Council has received each of the Plan Commission staff reports prior to each of those meetings and has also received a write-up for your packet this evening. I will review the Plan Commission's action at their most recent meeting, and then we'll provide a review of the possible actions before the council tonight. Please advance. The process. Stepping back, as the mayor said, this area has been discussed for many, many years. In 2011, a cultural corridor committee was appointed, an ad hoc committee. And that committee spent a lot of time holding public hearings, looking at the surrounding area, thinking about the future and thinking about what our central business district needed to really assure its long-term vitality and stability. As the mayor said, some of what we're seeing right now in our central business district is the result of some of the work that was done back there. Laurel Avenue, the former municipal services site has redeveloped. We are seeing the occupancy of the second phase of the McKinley development. The activity that we're seeing near our central business district and a bit further from our central business district. For instance, the Swift properties, the 4 new lots that were created just another half a block to the east. The significant amount of activity that is occurring, the home sales that are occurring, the development that is occurring throughout the community is really resulting in significant interest in our community, and certainly a number of calls that 3 years ago we weren't receiving. In 2016 and 2017, the Plan Commission developed a master plan and development parameters that came directly out of that cultural corridor study that really focused on transitioning the area east of McKinley Road, in that area between Westminster and Deer Path, from office to multifamily development. The development parameters talked about things like walkability and a unified development and open space and public access and high quality architectural design, high quality materials, and certainly paying reverence to the important historic buildings all around this site. In 2017, phase 1 was approved. The Plan Commission, City Council, and Building Review Board were involved in that process. In 2019, phase 2 was approved. Again, Plan Commission, City Council, and Building Review Board were involved in that process. Phase 1 and phase 2 are not within the city's historic district. This development site is a bit unusual in that it is bifurcated, and just the eastern portion is within the historic district. The reason the city-owned property, the phase 3 property, was included in the historic district is because it was the site of the historic Quinlan Coach House, which was subdivided off from the original estate house many years ago. That building was demolished a few years ago. The city worked with the then Lake Forest Lake Bluff Historical Society to urge them to move out of the building because of safety concerns. The building was never built to be a public structure, and there were a variety of issues that were causing concern: mechanical, water infiltration, and in fact, the west masonry wall was buckling. In June of 2019, the Plan Commission for the first time saw some early concepts for the phase 3 development. The developer came forward early, specifically at the request of the Plan Commission. The Plan Commission said, bring concepts in, don't go too far down the road. We want this to be a public process. The Plan Commission was interested in engaging the neighbors and essentially wanted to provide early input to assure that the design moved in a direction that was consistent with the original goal for this area. Between June of 2019 and March of 2021, the Plan Commission held a public hearing which continued over the course of 6 meetings. Importantly, after each of those meetings, the developer modified the plan. This plan continued to evolve, and although we have heard many times a criticism that the plan continues to change, in this case, the developer was very responsive to the Plan Commission, who encouraged exploration of various ideas. And perhaps as a result of the developer's willingness to continue to make modifications, this process has been elongated and frankly complicated and to some extent confusing. In December of 2019, the Plan Commission saw a proposal for a 3-story building, a single building, a 3-story condominium building for the phase 3 site. At that time in December of 2019, the Plan Commission voted 6-0 in support of that plan. They determined at that meeting they concluded at that meeting that the plan was consistent with the master plan, with the development parameters, and in response to their unanimous vote and support, city staff then moved forward with presenting that plan to the Historic Preservation Commission in early 2020. The Historic Preservation Commission saw the plan on 2 occasions and ultimately denied the 3-story plan 7-3. The HPC did not issue a certificate of appropriateness, specifically expressing concern about the massing and height of the building. They commented that a 3-story building was not an appropriate transition from the larger buildings fronting on McKinley Road to the single-family homes, both to the north across Westminster and to the east. After that denial, the petitioner did file an appeal with the City Council. However, they asked that that appeal be held as they explored other options in an effort to respond to the concerns that were raised. The Plan Commission then saw a revised plan, which was a 2-story plan, and considered that over a number of meetings. Most recently, earlier this year, in January of this year, forwarded a recommendation to the City Council to deny a zone change that was now associated with this plan. In an effort to respond to concerns about the height of the building, the developer did acquire, on their own volition, acquired the property to the east and proposed a zone change for a 38-foot wide strip of the western portion of that property to allow the building to be reconfigured as a 2-story building while still maintaining the same number of units. Generally the same square footage, although it ended up being a little bit less. As you are aware, the City Council in February heard that denial and remanded the matter back to the Plan Commission for reconsideration with a request that the Plan Commission act on the petition in its entirety. You now have before you the result of a March 10th Plan Commission meeting, which is a recommendation from the Plan Commission to deny the project, both the zone change as well as the special use permit, which would approve the planned multifamily development and the plat of consolidation in a 4-2 vote. The question that has been asked as part of this process is, why is this petition before the City Council at this time? Why was it not forwarded to the Historic Preservation Commission? And there are a number of reasons. Again, the Plan Commission is simply a recommending body. The Plan Commission forwarded a recommendation to the City Council, and there is importance in the City Council considering recommendations of the Plan Commission in a timely manner. In fact, for zone changes, there is a mandated time within which the City Council needs to act on zone changes. As the mayor said, this process has been long. There is a need that clearly the commissions, the Plan Commission and Historic Preservation Commission, has needed some direction from the City Council as they've moved through this process and as the plan has continued to evolve. Importantly, when the Plan Commission acts on zoning matters, zoning entitlements are most often directly forwarded to the City Council prior to any review by a design body. For instance, the Swift subdivision, again, located in this very area, was a planned preservation subdivision. There was a hearing over the course of several meetings before the Plan Commission. That subdivision the Plan Commission recommended approval of that subdivision. That was forwarded to the City Council for action. Only now are those homes coming back before the Historic Preservation Commission for review. A similar process occurred with the hospital. The hospital was approved through a special use permit. It is a non-residential use on residential property. That special use permit was heard by the Plan Commission over the course of a number of meetings, and their recommendation and support was forwarded to the council long before there was any discussion or any review of the design aspect. So what is occurring now is not unusual. When possible, staff prefers to bring projects to the city council tied up with a bow with all the approvals in order. In this case, the Historic Preservation Commission, as I noted earlier, has already seen this project. The commission rejected a 3-story building and directed consideration of a 2-story building and spoke of relating that building more to the existing buildings. So at this point, it is appropriate for the council to give some clear direction to the Historic Preservation Commission, both in fairness to the commission, but also in fairness to the petitioner, who has been patient through the process and has continued to make changes, and as a result, they have received conflicting information. Biddy, could you please advance the slide? Thank you. To talk for a moment about the current plan and the evolution, I do want to start with the master plan just very quickly. The master plan was approved was considered by the Plan Commission in 2016, approved in 2017. The master plan envisioned a unified development, including or allowing up to 4 phases with a private road. It envisioned the developer taking over the alley, the north-south alley, and I apologize, I can't use my cursor. And this development plan did evolve over the course of time. To the south, the developer, in collaboration with the Church of the Covenants, was able to acquire a strip of property in that area to really resolve resolve fully the McKinley streetscape. There was a modification to the green space. The Plan Commission felt strongly that the green space should be maintained in a size of approximately the green sward that's in Market Square. As the second building became a little larger as a result of the acquisition of the church property, that green space was pinched, and the Plan Commission directed that the third phase building be moved to the north. Over the course of time, there were various plans discussed and presented, both discussed before the Plan Commission and presented to the Plan Commission, including a 2-building scheme for phase 3, which included a condominium building and a duplex, which was rejected by the Plan Commission because of the massing on the streetscape. As I noted, a 3-story building was considered, and now a 2-story building is in front of the commission. Biddy, please advance the slide. The western portion of what today is addressed as the 373 East Westminster lot, the eastern 38 feet of that the western 38 feet of that property is now proposed to be added to the phase 3 property. In order to do that, a zone change is requested to rezone that property from the current R1 zoning to the adjacent R3 zoning. Next slide, please. The approvals requested include approval of a planned multifamily development, a plat of consolidation, and a special use permit, which would effectively approve both the planned multifamily development and the plat of consolidation. Those approvals are requested in addition to the zone change. Importantly, in the plan as now configured, the building has gotten wider, has extended to the east. In the GR3 zoning, a 6-foot setback is required. At the closest point, the building as proposed today is approximately 23 feet from the property line, providing a significant area for thick landscape buffering, which will buffer not only a new house proposed on 373 Westminster, but also will provide a transition, really a demarcation of moving from multifamily, more intense zoning into the residential zoning district. Next slide, please. And this is the landscape plan that simply illustrates on the east side of the building, the area that's provided for landscaping. Next slide, please. This slide, and Biddy, I don't know if you can help me out with the cursor, but on this slide provides a comparison of the building heights. The third building in on the bottom row, Biddy, if you could indicate, that is the proposed building. Keep in mind that there is a grade change that occurs in this area. The building just to the west of that is the existing 333 condominium building. The top images, and these images are also in your packet for a better look. The top images provide the building heights of the properties on the north side of Westminster. As proposed at the tallest point at the top of the penthouses on top of the roof, this building is consistent with the height allowed in this zoning district. And next slide, please. And this slide illustrates the building width. Again, Biddy, if you could put the cursor on the third building on the second row. The portion of the building that most closely approaches Westminster, the width of that building is shown here in comparison to other buildings on the streetscape. At the closest point, the front of the building is set back a greater distance, approximately 50 feet at the one-story element, greater distance than the required 40-foot setback. Next slide, please. This is simply a closer look just at the south side of the street. Again, Biddy, it is the third image. There you go. That simply shows this building height and the building width in comparison to the closest buildings on the south side of the street, with an image directly to the east as a proposed possible new house in that location. Next slide, please. Just a few quick images. Again, these I believe are in your packet. This is viewing the building from the northwest across Westminster. Next slide, please. And importantly, this is a view of the building from McKinley. This view, this perspective early on received a significant amount of focus from the Plan Commission. The Commission felt it was important to have a terminus to the streetscape, much like we see in Market Square. So that the image of a building as you're moving east on that road from the train station was an important item for the Plan Commission during their discussions. Next slide, please. Again, the standards, criteria, and parameters have been detailed in various staff reports. I won't speak to them in depth. This is not meant to be comprehensive, but as the Plan Commission reviewed the proposal, they considered the master plan and the development parameters. They considered zone change criteria next slide, please, Betty. Sorry. Just to give you a sense of the transition that does occur, that is in place with established zoning patterns in our central business district, the darkest red color is the heart of our central business district. It is Market Square. As you move to the east, you will see that there is a pattern of transitional zoning. GR3 zoning, which is the zoning on the city property currently, R1 zoning, which occurs as you move to the east, R3 zoning as you move further to the east, and R4 zoning. So as we step away from our central business district, a transition is appropriate and is consistent with the trend of development in this area. Next slide, please. The Plan Commission also evaluated the criteria for planned multifamily developments, new housing types, housing within walking distance to business districts, open space, streetscape entrances, and they also looked at the special use permit criteria, which require that a determination must be made that the proposed use is not detrimental to surrounding properties, does not harm the property values, does not impede orderly development, and that the proposed development is architecturally compatible, which again often occurs at the point of a design review. Next slide, please. Over the course of all these meetings, with the evolution of the plan, and after the remand of this matter by the City Council to the Plan Commission, on March 10th, the Plan Commission concluded its review of this petition and voted 4-2 to deny the petition. Both the, this is a recommendation of the Plan Commission. They recommended both denial of the zone change as well as denial of the special use permit, which would grant the planned multifamily development as well as approve the consolidation of parcels. The Plan Commission, the commissioners had a variety of opinions. There were 1 or 2 commissioners who opposed the zone change on its face due to concerns about establishing a precedent for future zone changes, negatively impacting the historic district as a whole. Other members of the commission expressed concern about the widening of the building on the streetscape from the width of the 3-story building. And a majority of the commission in this discussion, as they gave their findings and reasons for recommending denial, several of them commented that they would, and they continue to support the 3-story building as was proposed in December 2019 and approved by the commission in a 6-0 vote. And finally, next slide, please. Certainly the council has various options. As I noted, the zone change does require action by the council within 30 days per the code. The City Council can accept the recommendation of the Plan Commission to deny the petition. If you choose to move in that direction, it would be appropriate to pass a motion supporting that denial with direction to city staff and the city attorney to bring findings back to the City Council for affirmation at the next meeting. The City Council could choose to reject the recommendation of the Plan Commission and approve 1 or both ordinances which are included in the council packet. Certainly there may be other options, and if you choose to discuss those, I will ask for assistance from the city attorney in discussing those. Mr. Mayor, that concludes my comments at this point. I would be happy to answer questions.
Sorry. Thank you, Kathy. I guess at this stage, the best thing to do is probably open it up for questions and comments from members of the City Council. We will have public comment after the City Council's discussion.
Hi, Mr. Mayor. Jim Preschlack here. I have a couple questions. Thanks, Kathy, for the presentation. First question I have is, can you just speak generally about the precedent for the City Council to overturn a recommendation from the Plan Commission? I'm on the council for 3 years or so, and there's been a couple instances where that's happened. And also I've been on the HPC in the past where that's happened as well. So I just think, it is part of our process. It's probably something that we want, to your point, to try to mitigate, but it is within the normal process of our community development process. And I wanted to just get a sense from you as to how often it happens and just what kind of situations it occurred, just to give people that are listening and the council a broader context. That's the first question.
Alderman Preschlack, you are correct. It does not happen often. The city council gives tremendous credit to decisions made by the board or commission, the boards and commissions. The most recent petition that I recall, an overturn, not overturn, but a rejection of a recommendation from a board or commission was the Barrett campus situation. The city council ultimately overturned the decision of the Historic Preservation Commission in that case, and the city council explained it much as Mayor Pandeleon did at the beginning of his comments, the beginning of this agenda item, that the city council really is charged with looking at broader factors than each of the individual boards and commissions. Their purview is fairly narrow, which at times for complicated petitions can make it difficult for boards and commissions to focus on their purview. And it is not inappropriate for the council to provide direction, or in situations, certainly the code provides for the council to be the ultimate decision maker. The council does have the authority to reject a recommendation, but again, it does not happen often.
And there was a car wash too. Is that an example as well?
That is an example, yes.
Okay. And then I've gotten a lot of emails, and I think it was also implicit in explicit in the petition that was circulated in the community, that somehow the zoning change from R1 to GR3 would put our historic district at risk. I mean, I think I'd like to try to nip that, at least from my perspective, get your perspective, because on the HPC, we took every petition one at a time, and the precedent that this would set, I really just don't think that is a big risk, but I want to get your perspective on it so we understand how to think through this as we get into deliberations.
Each and every request for a zone change must be considered on its own merits. It is true that we have not seen zone changes within the historic district, or at least not many of them. In this case, you have a 38-foot wide strip of property that is immediately adjacent to GR3 zoning. It is in a transition area. It's at the edge of a transition area, but it has unique aspects to it in that it is immediately adjacent to the site. And the fact that it is 38 feet of a parcel that is much larger than the minimum lot size required in the R1 zoning district. So approving a zone change for this parcel, whether the council does it or not, does not threaten the historic district as a whole. Many years ago, and some of you probably know whether it was in the 70s or 80s, but a condominium building was approved as an adaptive reuse on Mayflower Road in Ferry Hall. And all those decades ago, that has not resulted in structures up and down Mayflower coming in for requests for either adaptive reuse for condominiums or for demolition and construction of higher density. So again, looking very specifically at each petition is a requirement of the code.
Thanks, Kathy.
Other comments or questions? Alderman Bushman.
Just to get some clarification on a couple things you said, Kathy. First, you talk about other examples in which we've had rezoning and how that's the first issue that needs to be addressed. Do we have somewhat of a unique situation here where we're really not trying to determine a lot or multiple lots as to what should be going on those lots? But don't we have zoning already in place, the GR3, which is a transitional zoning? And the question is, does it need to be expanded? Is that different from these other examples you gave?
I believe each of the examples are very unique that I gave. Certainly the Swift property was a unique situation in that a long time 4+ acre property was being subdivided and a historic home was being demolished. There was lots of discussion around that. Certainly the college and hospital are unique. Each of our churches are unique. So yes, Alderman Bushman, I think this development site, this phase 3 parcel, this request for zoning is unique. And because of that can be distinguished from other requests that might follow.
Yeah, because aren't we talking about a fraction of an acre that we're looking at for rezoning here?
Correct. About 7,300 square feet. I believe the exact number is
20% of an acre. Yeah, it's a fraction. And the only reason we're talking about this rezoning is because we're trying to determine what is an appropriate transition for a structure on this property that's separated by 3-story condominiums to the west and single-family homes in a historic district to the north and the east. And unfortunately, the city property is only 75 feet wide. And if we're saying we need a transitional piece to blend in between those rather two extremes, it's not easy. And it seems like what we're looking at here is maybe we do need to expand our view on not just the 75 foot, but the 113 feet, I think it would be. And to me, that does make sense, but you're still back to the question, not so much of the rezoning, but whether the structure itself is the right transition. And that's something maybe we'll get into a little further in the detail. But one other point, clarification, I've seen at times reference that the developer is thinking of going to a 30-foot strip rather than a 38-foot. Is that something that's before us now or what?
What is before you is the 38-foot strip. The Plan Commission certainly talked about a 30-foot strip. What that does, and I believe why the developer is still requesting approval of the 38 feet, by keeping the 38 feet, it allows the special use permit to mandate extensive landscaping within that 25-foot strip. If that setback is reduced, we are really hamstrung a bit. That extra width still maintains a property to the east that is significantly larger than the minimum lot size required in R1 and allows for drainage to be properly handled and allows the special use permit or the approved landscape plan to require in perpetuity that landscaping along that east side be maintained as a buffer in that transition area.
And another point of clarification, you mentioned something that I guess I wasn't familiar with, that if there's a zone change, the council has to take action within 30 days on that. So is the clock ticking on the question of whether this 38-foot strip in the 373 property should be rezoned or not? Do we have to act on that in 30 days?
So I can answer that, Alderman Bushman. This is Julie Tappendorf. The language in the code requires the recommendation from the Plan Commission be presented to the City Council within 30 days after the close of the hearing. It doesn't require action by the City Council, but the Plan Commission needs to present it. And so this is within that 30-day period.
Right, so we fulfilled the statutory or ordinance requirements on that point.
By bringing it to the council.
Right, thank you.
Kathy, this is Jim. I just had one follow-up question, and thanks, Ray, for your comments. Have you ever recalled a situation where the Plan Commission has approved a 3-story structure or a structure, and then the HPC has denied it? Because it seems like there's a little tug of war here, and if there's still people on the Plan Commission that are open to a 3-story structure, you know, the HPC is maybe has more primacy on massing and design, and the transition issue crops up. I'm just kind of curious, and this may be the kind of unique circumstance of this, and that's why I think it's really important for us to act on this tonight. But I'm just curious if you can recall a similar situation, and then the council really does have the primacy to establish the land use first and then ask the HPC to address the transition and the massing and design issues. Am I thinking about that right? Is that correct?
In response to your first question, I do not recall a situation where the Plan Commission has recommended approval of zoning entitlements and the HPC has rejected the building. Now that may be because we normally don't go right from the Plan Commission to one of the design review boards, either the Building Review Board or the HPC. We normally bring zoning entitlements directly to the City Council. I believe this petition has been difficult for both the Plan Commission and the Historic Preservation Commission because the issues have become mixed. I believe that some of the historic preservation discussion revolved around the appropriateness of the zone change and potential impact on the historic district. So certainly if the council chooses to act tonight, the design aspects of the building, knowing where the council is on this, obviously if the council chooses to accept the recommendation from the Plan Commission, this will not go any further to the Historic Preservation Commission. If the council chooses to approve the zone change and the special use permit, that gives the Historic Preservation some clear direction, and that may allow that commission to focus on architectural detailing, massing, landscape, exterior lighting, exterior materials, elements that they are more used to and in fact more obligated through the code to focus on.
Thanks. So this is my last question. I've heard some comments on the Plan Commission, I guess the March 10th meeting that I listened to, and it may even come up tonight, but there's, a lot of people in and around the development that are, questioning the master plan, or, it didn't have this in it. It is, I think there was a quote that said, we kind of use it as a cudgel sometimes to get things done. I think it's really important to have an open conversation here about the strategic intent of the master plan. It's not etched in stone or it's directional. And I'm just trying to get a sense for that. And I think you did a nice job on that on the write-up. And I think it's maybe important to share that perspective a little bit because, there were 2 stories on this lot up to, and just what the role the master plan plays in this and how we got here. And maybe just to reiterate that a little bit, it'd be helpful for me.
As I noted, the master plan was a follow-up to the work of the Cultural Corridor Committee. And that master plan was initiated when it became clear that the developer was likely or perhaps already had acquired the northernmost office building. The developer was prepared. I don't remember if anything was submitted, but I know certainly at the staff level, we saw plans for a replacement office building on that northern parcel. And at that point, the city really encouraged the developer to pause and allow a Plan Commission discussion, and the master plan discussion ensued. Again, following on the ad hoc committee's work, really encouraging the redevelopment of that area rather than for office, for multifamily residential development, so that we would be adding high quality housing that would ideally attract existing Lake Forest residents or new buyers, as it is proven to do, to that area to really directly offer support to our central business district. The master plan envisioned development of the area in phases. It envisioned pedestrian pathways that would have public access. It envisioned a green space. It envisioned some portion of a small portion of property being added to the library site. The library representatives at that time had said their main concern was the loss of the de facto parking that they were using behind the Historical Society building. So the intent was to give them some land area that could replace parking, or they could use as they chose to. The master plan envisioned a unified development. Specifically, there was discussion about avoiding, if possible, the situation where each of the office parcels and then the city parcel in one or two pieces would be acquired by different developers, and we'd be piecemealing a very important streetscape that's located across from our historic train station, adjacent to Howard Van Doren designed Church of the Covenants, adjacent to the library, and certainly at the entry area to very significant and historic homes. The master plan was intended as a guide, and it was acknowledged that as specific site plans were developed, as properties were acquired, that the plan should keep with the intent of the master plan, but it was not in any way meant to identify a specific building footprint.
I have a quick question for Kathy, or just my recollection is during the Kelmscott Park consideration, I can't remember if it was the Historic Preservation Commission or the Plan Commission, but I believe that the council overturned one or the other of them in the course of that project. Again, in furtherance of a broader agenda that was, critical to the community as a whole.
I don't remember specifically. It would not have been the Historic Preservation Commission. It might have been the Building Review Board. I do know through that process, Mr. Mayor, you know intimately because you were involved in that, that through the Property and Public Lands Committee, through the City Council, considerable direction was given to the Plan Commission throughout that process of looking at that 10-acre former municipal services site, which was in 2 zoning districts, which was developed as a planned development in phases. So it was very similar. And certainly there were many concerns raised about that development: density, building height, design of the buildings, open space, pedestrian connections. So on a much larger scale, that development is a good correlation to what we're looking at tonight.
And this is also a PUD, right?
It is.
So by definition, if I remember my zoning class correctly, or planning and zoning classes correctly, that a PUD stands on its own and establishes no precedent.
Correct. And no variances are requested as part of this planned multifamily development.
Kathy, I don't know if this is a statement or a question, but, and I don't know if it's either just my perception or others. When we remanded back on February 2nd, we remanded back to the Plan Commission. I was under the impression that there would have been, more vetting, perhaps, more consideration given to alternatives, whether it be this, the structure of the building or, some other types of proposals, some other type of residential, condominiums or duplexes. And then when they reviewed it again, I was a little taken aback that it really was very similar. It was almost the exact same structure or form that we saw when we reviewed it in February.
Alderman Karas, the Plan Commission is obligated to take action on the plan presented to them. The Plan Commission, nor the Historic Preservation, nor the City Council can act as a design team and actually design projects. I will say that in these, since June of 2019, the Plan Commission did exactly what you're saying. The developer didn't have to agree to that, but the Plan Commission did consider different building types, different architectural styles, different building heights. There was a requirement in either the development parameters or another area that the building had underground parking, which the Plan Commission supported avoiding multiple driveways. So many of those discussions occurred early on, but with the remand, it really was on the specific plan that in fact, between the January meeting and the March meeting, that the width of that building did shrink by 8 feet. That was a change made by the developer, not made by the plan commission, and not made by staff.
But what we're looking at it in tonight's form, it's 38 feet, not the 30 foot.
The building is 8 feet narrower than was presented in January. The zone change parcel is 38 feet. And that remains despite the fact that the building
Okay, I see.
was shrunk by 8 feet specifically to allow space
Landscaping.
for landscaping and to manage drainage appropriately, and to put that obligation not on a future neighboring property owner, but on the condominium association.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
So one other thing, and I think everybody understands this clearly, but just to make sure, the zone change is being requested so that a 2-story building can be made practical here with underground parking versus a 3-story building that was accepted by the Plan Commission and rejected by the HPC. So in response to the HPC, the petitioner went and acquired the nearby property and is now seeking to take a relatively small slice of that property to make room for a 2-story building, which from a massing point of view, at least in the eyes of the Historic Preservation Commission, is more desirable. So that's what's driving the zone change, and that's all as far as I know. Kathy, maybe you can verify that.
That is correct. The driver for the zone change was the rejection of the 3-story building by the Historic Preservation Commission.
And then Kathy, this is Jim. So when it first came to us, it was just the zone change denial, right? It wasn't the whole package. So we got that and we remanded it to them. And I remember our conversation, and it is on the tape, but we just said, don't let the zone change get in the way of considering, the best project, So I think as executives in the city council, we're kind of giving them the green light to consider it. There's also this thing called the market, and developers that, coalesce around market demand and, the types of things that people are building. And there's some judgment here. The market will bear what we can get there. And obviously our zoning and our deliberations shape this. I'm just kind of curious on the market front. This is such a weird lot. It's such a strange, narrow lot. I'm just wondering, in the history of this, as it's been on the market, have there been other folks that have been interested? Or, this just seems like a natural developer because of, the architectural consistency. It's the same people that did the other adjacent properties. And if it's 2-story, you can manage the transition and all these other things. But I'm just kind of curious because I think the temptation is, well, let's just wait and see and hope something better comes along. But the market is the market, and I don't think that is maybe the best thing to do with fiduciary responsibility for our city, to just hope and wait. So I'm just kind of curious, what have your perception been of the market and that site?
I can't really speak to the market, but what I can speak to is the fact that as the developer acquired first 1, then 2, then all 3 office parcels, it was the city who said, the Property and Public Lands Committee, that said, we need to approach the developer. It only makes sense for the city site to be part of this development. You have the north-south alley that was used for a cut through from the library for a number of years. And that alley is integral to this development. So the thought of the city offloading responsibility, ongoing responsibility and ownership of that alley was a key factor, recognizing the narrowness of this parcel and really the limited ability to have a separate developer come in and perhaps consider row homes that might have a series of driveways or garages that face either front or back, or duplexes, the massing of which could certainly be as tall as the building as proposed today and could actually be closer to the streetscape. It was the city that approached the developer on 2 different occasions with a request to incorporate this development or the city site into the development to achieve a high quality unified development near the central business district.
I'd like to add a bit to that because I was there. There is an appraisal. If I recall correctly, the value that the city's receiving for the site exceeds the appraisal on its face. Plus, there were all these additional improvements improvements and benefits like demolition of the building, remediation of asbestos, privatization of the alley, and so forth. That were, there was just, and there was discussion about taking the property to market, and we had a real estate consultant assist us in considering that. And this was frankly not a difficult decision. It was quite clear that this was the buyer that was going to get the best result for the city. The question is, would we be able to execute it or not? And so that's sort of the origin story here.
Yeah, thanks. That's helpful, Kathy and Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
If I could ask a clarifying question again, because there's been several times where it was referenced back to the Plan Commission action in December of 2019. And actually, I've looked at the minutes, looked at the agenda, looked at Kathy's report, and it's a follow-up to a September 2019 Plan Commission meeting. My understanding of that 6-0 vote was not a vote on approval of the plan development or the SUP, was rather a vote indicating that they find that the conceptual plan conforms to the master plan, that the site plan seems to be consistent. But I thought they reserved specifically the fact that they were not giving approval to the SUD or the plan development. Is that a fair statement, Kathy?
It is. The vote specifically was a 6-0 endorsement of the plan then presented, finding it consistent with the development parameters and the master plan.
And there was a second part of those meetings that the Plan Commission had in September and December, and that is an expression of concern about the massing and the height of the structure. And the outcome of those meetings was a referral to the HPC, where they asked the HPC for its input on building massing, roof design, height, architectural elements and details, streetscape views, and landscaping. And you've covered what sort of response did come from HPC. But to me, it's a process I want, hopefully all of us to appreciate, where the HPC did, as part of the duty that's built into its ordinance, to be somewhat of advisory body to other boards and commissions. And so the Plan Commission looked at that, and not making a final decision that 6-0, they approve a 3-story building, but rather there was a further process that needed to go through.
Which is how we got a 2-story proposal with a proposed zone change. That was then rejected by the Plan Commission. So, Alderman Rummel?
So just so that I have an understanding of this, so how wide was that 3-story building? Do you know, Kathy, off the top of your head, or just what's the comparison of the footprint of the 3-story building compared to this building?
I'd have to look up the exact number, but you can see the width of the building expand to the east in the area where the zone change is approved. I can certainly try and look that up while you're talking.
Well, because, what I hear throughout all of these discussions is the massing of the building, it's just too big. Initially it was, it's too big and it's too high, and now we're hearing a lot of the massing of the building, it's too large for the site. So I'm trying to understand, did we just take a 3-story building and flatten it out, and now like a pancake, it's sort of now is dripping over the pan into the lot next door? But have we in the process not really addressed the massing of this building? And I don't know who the appropriate board is to address that. It looks like I don't think it's the HPC. I don't think they're going to get into building size or footprint of the building. And so what I'm hearing from the Plan Commission is massing. It's too massive for this site. And so who addresses that, or how do we explore that, unless we reject this petition that's in front of us and ask for it to be addressed?
Alderman Rommel, would you like me to respond to that?
Yeah.
Okay. I think you have a recommendation on that very point from the Plan Commission. You have a 4-2 vote. At least one of those Plan Commission votes really pertain to the zone change itself and concern about broader application. But you do have a recommendation from the Plan Commission stating exactly as you just reviewed, that in the opinion of some, the width of the building is not consistent, does not meet the standards for a special use permit. Certainly, as we moved from a 3-story building to a 2-story building, the height of the building was reduced. The northern end of the building did get wider, and again was reduced over the last few meetings, another 8 feet. But I can try and get you those exact dimensions if I have a chance.
But Kathy, can I ask you to repeat something you said before, that there are no variances being requested here? So we don't have setback issues. We don't have height issues. Is there something, what is it about the massing of the building, if we don't have any variances requested, that's out of bounds?
Well, I can't speak to the thought process of those Plan Commissioners. What I can say is that you do in your packet have a streetscape comparison that shows the width of the building, the part of the building that extends closest to Westminster is a 1-story element, a screen porch. The main mass of the building steps back. Those dimensions are provided in your packet, both the width of the building, the setback of the building from Westminster in comparison to other buildings, and the height of the building. So could a duplex be constructed on the north part of the city-owned property alone that was as tall as this building? Yes, it would be narrower because you have that additional part of the building that extends into the parcel requested for a zone change.
Hey, Kathy, this is Jim again. Sorry. So I was on the HPC and I remember the 17 design criteria that we used to evaluate buildings in the historic district. And that includes the height and any variances that the mayor made, but also the overall building mass, right? I mean, it's kind of my understanding that would be, those kind of design elements are the purview of the HPC, and that the Plan Commission has a bit of a broader function around land use, and in this particular case, a zoning issue, to try to react to the feedback that the HPC gave on the 3-story structure. And so it just seems like the Plan Commission was using HPC type criteria to evaluate this, or I may be overreading it, but I think that's why it makes sense for me for us to move forward on this zoning issue, kind of yay or nay, and the special use and the consolidated plat, and then have the HPC do all what we do when we're on the HPC to apply these 17 design criteria to address the issues that Alderman Rummel mentioned. Am I thinking about that correctly?
I think in this petition, in part because of the lengthy discussion, the issues have become jumbled, and frankly, it is difficult and understandable that board and commission members are having trouble separating those. That is why this is before the city council. It's clear, given that we have been discussing this at commission levels since June of 2019, that some direction and perhaps some decision, if the council sees fit, is appropriate to move this forward.
Thanks.
Okay, well, our conversation here has been going on for about an hour. We've been in the meeting for 2 hours. We have members of the public that have been waiting patiently, I presume, to state their position. So I think, with all due respect to the council, I'd like to switch over to public comment at this point in the interest of bringing this to some sort of a conclusion. So I'm going to ask that the number be posted for public comment and the hands raised feature be activated, and then we'll wait a couple of minutes for any member of the public that would like to speak about this.
Mr. Mayor, we currently have 3 callers on hold for public comments. Give me one moment and I will promote the first caller.
Thank you. While we're waiting, I'd like to remind all the members of the public, we have a 3-minute limit. Biddy will sound the alarm when the 3 minutes have been exceeded. And please, when you speak, at the beginning, state your name and your address.
All right. Caller, please state your name and proceed with your comments.
Thank you. This is Jeff Cherosian. My wife and I live at 401 East Westminster. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Alderman, for hearing public comment on this. A lot of people have had trouble with Zoom and in calling in, so please be patient with the call they come in. First of all, let me take a little bit of time to talk about process, something I probably avoid most of the time when we're having these calls, but I think it's important here. First of all, we weren't made aware of today's agenda or received any notification at all from the city about today's hearing until we happened on Friday night to look at the website of the city and realized it was just posted Friday, on Good Friday. The multi-page packet that you received and probably looked at over the Easter weekend. The process is especially important here since city staff has not followed the city's code. Pursuant to section 159.044 of the city code, the council must only consider the Plan Commission's report and recommendations when considering a zoning change, which that and the special use permit 4373 East Westminster is the only issue before you tonight, not phase 3. Phase 3 was approved ages ago. The developer abandoned phase 3 on the city property as presented before and as approved by the city council years ago. The only issue before you tonight is special use and zoning change on the 373 property, a property that is not owned by the city. There is nothing in section 159.044 that allows the petitioner or the city staff, which is wearing two hats here because the city owns the adjacent property, to editorialize or advocate for a position. That's what the Plan Commission is for. The city staff weighing in on this is even more egregious because it's a violation of city code when city staff is advocating for a position that is contrary to the Plan Commission's report and recommendation. That is absolutely not allowed. City staff does not operate as an independent body. It must follow the code, must do the work directed to it by City Council, and while it can provide certain advice to various duly appointed commissions, it absolutely cannot undermine or contradict the valid votes and decisions of those commissions. Here, the city staff is making a presentation to you that is not allowed by the code. It's advocating a position that is contrary to the Plan Commission's recommendation with no one to speak for plans since this is not a proper procedure. City staff also has only written one proposed ordinance for you that is against the city's own Plan Commission. Presumably this draft ordinance was written by the city attorney, which is another problem. The city attorney represents the city, which acts through its council and the city's duly appointed commissions. The city attorney does not work for city staff in contravention of the Plan Commission's vote. The Plan Commission has spoken twice, and now it is for City Council to review that recommendation and only the recommendation and vote to approve or reject it. Now, something else is at play.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Could we get to the next caller, please?
Caller, please state your name and proceed with your comments.
Hi, this is Todd Curry. I'm a resident of Lake Forest at 360 West, East Westminster, right across from the parcel in question. Just briefly, I do want to raise a bit of a question, or an issue rather, with some of the comments made by the council, with all due respect, about the size of the parcel, that it's just quote unquote a fraction of an acre. I think if Starbucks were to propose a restaurant in Forest Park, no one would come forward and say it's just a fraction of an acre. The size of this parcel is not relevant. What matters is where this parcel lies. And I believe a lot of this decision making is really based on people sort of leaning on their recollections of the vision quest that was the cultural corridor and the famed master plan, which I think unfortunately is pretty distant and not accessible by a lot of members of the community. And so to see it referenced so frequently and never really articulated clearly makes it very hard to understand where certain, how the decision is being made. Lastly, I'll just say the economics of this deal have been a mystery. Mr. Mayor, you mentioned that the city received an appraisal for the property. That would have been years ago. I don't understand why the city can't disclose the terms under which this parcel has been the terms that were met with the proposed developer. I think, again, going back to the issue of where the parcel lies, what I would say is, we would all agree that the historic district is the soul of Lake Forest. I would ask you, if you're proposing to sell part of our soul, that you tell us at least the price that you're getting. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next comment or next member of the public?
Caller, please state your name and proceed with your comments.
Hi there, it's Kari Stroka. And I've listened to the meeting this evening, and I have to say I find it rather non-transparent and fairly despicable. I mean, this has been voted on, voted down, and you people keep pursuing
Mr.
it.
Mayor, I object. Mr. Mayor, I'm going to object. I can't tolerate somebody saying that this process is despicable. It's impugning the integrity of my colleagues and everybody on the boards. I would ask the speaker retract that statement and move on or terminate her input. I won't tolerate somebody calling any of my colleagues or city staff despicable.
All right. However, you know, you work for us. We're the people of the town. And this doesn't sound like it's a very adequate methodology in which you're coming to these conclusions. I mean, most of us don't hear about any of this. It's very clandestine-like. The man before me even said he just found out about it Friday, Good Friday. And so it seems like there's another motive here, and it's not going to fulfill that many families' dreams of being in Lake Forest, and it's a behemoth. Would you like living next to that? It's easy for you guys to make these decisions, and yet you don't live by it to have the repercussions of the behemoth. So, you know, I'm disappointed that this is going the direction it is, because I don't think you're listening to the residents. My understanding is there's been over 2,000 people vote in petitioning against this, and yet you continue to pursue it. So that's what I'd like to say this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. We have another caller.
Right, caller, please state your name and proceed with your comments.
This is Pauline Moore at 927 Barclay Circle. Good evening, Mayor Pandolin and members of the City Council. I'm not calling to say anything about the proposed development, but I do want to talk about zoning per se and my concerns about it. Zoning, of course, is a protection for everyone in the community, near, in, or far away from an historic district. It's an insurance for us that nothing really dramatic will happen within our neighborhoods to change their character. I'd like to say a little bit, very little bit, about Lake Forest and zoning and the relationship. It's my understanding, and I think I'm correct in this, that Lake Forest was the first community in the state of Illinois to have zoning. So the history goes back. Each exception that you mentioned seemed to make the next one easier. And I'm talking about the hospital, Barra, Kelms, Scott Court, whatever. So zoning should be more than just a suggestion. And the Plan Commission has stayed firm in that, and I commend them for it. And I hope you'll take this into consideration when you make your decision. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Pauline, and thanks for everything you and Roger have done for Lake Forest over many, many years.
Mr. Mayor, we have other callers on the line, but we'll take the raised hand, and that is going to be Sally Downey, who will join us in a moment.
Hello? Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak tonight. For those of you who know me, it's rare that I'm close to being at a loss for words, but the timing of this meeting and reading the staff recommendation has left me in disbelief. Given the interest in the neighborhood uproar over this issue, I would have hoped that the city, who has all of our email addresses, would have given us proper notice, but given it's right after the holiday weekend with many traveling, I'm not sure how many people would be finding the energy to weigh in one more time. But I cannot sit by and say nothing. I watched your city council meeting when you clearly sent a directive to the Plan Commission to look at the McKinley Westminster development with the LaSalle Sinclair lens. and also asked them to, quote, look at the best possible project that provides the best possible transition and include detailed findings of whether or not the applicable findings are satisfied, unquote. I then watched the Plan Commission a couple weeks later and saw 4 out of 6 do their jobs. One stated it was unnecessary to go over the LaSalle-Sinclair standards, and so 4 out of the 6 did. The questioning showed a level of expertise regarding building, grade levels, drainage, scale, mass, and reading complicated plans that was incredibly impressive. The Plan Commission also discovered that night that they didn't have all the correct drawings. The meeting was civil, thoughtful, professional, and they voted it down based off of the directives you gave them. While I understand that the Plan Commissioners are in an advisory role, those commissioners are placed there based on their expertise. Their expertise has now said twice no to rezoning and no to a special use permit. The neighborhood has said from day one, we aren't against development, but this building should be fitting into the parcels that were originally designated for this use. The neighbors may have stated, as did HPC, that the mass and scale of the 3-story condo was a no-go, but at no time did any of us suggest that the solution was a 2-story building that would need 38 feet of additional land from a neighboring property. It appears that the only entity that did suggest to the developers to buy 373 Westminster was the city. And the idea of taking down the Donovan house and putting a condo closer was not a new idea, but one discussed with neighbors well over a year ago. The neighbors said absolutely not, and now we are here. Now the narrative continues to claim that by placing the 2-story condo into 373 Westminster, it will make the neighbors happy, be the appropriate transition into the historic neighborhood, and lucky for us, will solve a water drainage issue that wasn't considered an issue when Mr. Donovan owned the land. The staff summary for tonight's agenda appears to be promoting once again a vote to move forward with phase 3 in its current iteration. Nowhere does the staff summary fully reflect the Plan Commission vote and the reasons behind it, nor the neighbors and other residents' concern. And tonight we have heard the mayor feels like the developers have done so much work to appease the neighbors that it's time to move forward and let the developers start building. Alderman Bushman, as for your comments that the original lots are perhaps too small, the master plan should have probably addressed that earlier or not let another condo be built. Alderman Rommel, you are right. A 3rd-story building was squished like a pancake into 2 stories, the same number of units, but the Plan Commission said it was more than 2 stories after discovering there was a living space in the top roof area. And the Westminster facade, I believe, is twice the width of the original design. You should ask Steve Douglas on the Plan Commission. He asked that same question. And Alderman Preschlack, the Plan Commission did the job you asked of them. They did not overstep. The biggest beneficiary of this whole deal is the developer. Read the staff report. The developers get the same number of units and parking spaces, but only if they can get the rezoning and special use. Why is the city putting the for-profit developer before those who live in the neighborhood? And more importantly, why do we have advisory commissions if you aren't going to listen to their expertise? I respectfully ask that you uphold the Plan Commission's no vote for a zoning change and special use permit. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next comment.
Mr. Mayor, we have 2 callers on hold for public comments. I'm going to put the next person through. Give me 1 moment. Caller, please state your name and proceed with your comments.
My name is Arlen Peterson. I live at 723 McKinley Road. First of all, I'd like to thank all of you for the extended amount of hours and time that you devote to the city and to the betterment of our community. I realize that there have been a handful of community people that, for whatever reason, are evidently opposed to anything changing in this town. And I think that's unfortunate. I think that we experienced that with Kelmscott. We've experienced it with other projects in town where very few vocal people have tried to change the minds of the majority of the community. The buildings that are currently existing have provided a wonderful opportunity for senior families, long-term families in this community to maintain their attachment to the community and to their families. And I think this third phase wraps up a beautiful project that was properly planned. I think the minuscule amount of historical property that's being asked to be rezoned, given the fact that we've got so much historical property in this town, and this serves the betterment of the entire community, I think it's an absolute requirement that the city council think about the views and the opportunities for the entire city and vote positively for this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We have one more caller, I guess.
Caller, please state your name and proceed with your comments.
Hang on, I gotta. My name is Regina Lind. I live at 338 East Westminster. We're directly across the street from, well, sort of catty-corner across the street from the proposed phase 3. We bought our home in mid-90s, and we renovated this historic home with, it took us a long time to do it, 8 years, but we were very aware of the respect for the historic, at that time it wasn't historic district, but we were very aware of the respect for the historic property and the properties around. Our opposition to this doesn't have to do with development or the like. It's more to do with a lack of respect. A lack of respect for the decisions already made by the Plan Commission twice. A lack of respect shown to the neighborhood from the developers in terms of pollution and noise and unwillingness to respond to any of our suggestions or complaints. A lack of respect for the historic nature of the community and for the aesthetics and for what fits into the community. And so we're very concerned about your decisions and hope that you are able to hear our voices and hear our concerns and what's important to us. And thank you for listening, and thank you for all you do.
Thank you. Do we have any other callers or hands raised?
We do, Mr. Mayor. Next hand raise is Susan Daly. We'll bring her on.
Yes, my name is Susan Saylor Daly. I live at 1160 North Sheridan Road, and I frequent the four-way stop at Westminster and McKinley Road quite often, going in and out of town to my home. And after the very first Plan Commission meeting that I listened to, I really paid attention when I stopped at that stop sign and I was headed east. And there was a very gradual transition that comes from the condo building to the small gray house, and then you swoop down into a residential area, save for the Episcopal Church. I think that the property owners had every reasonable expectation that there would be homes there, or a single family house, or at the most a duplex. But I think it is shocking to think that we are actually considering bringing a building that looks very much like the two buildings that are around the corner on McKinley to our Westminster corridor. It just doesn't look right. It is not the right development for this site. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We'll take our caller next.
Caller, if you could please state your name and proceed with your comments.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Leslie Lordino, and I live at 351 East Westminster. So in the last few calls, I've mentioned the same comment, and I just want to reiterate it again. The transition of our house onto East Westminster, to me, is a transition of single-family homes. So we go from our home to Donovan's home, and so on. And so I believe the addition of this condo building will interrupt us, it will engulf our home, and it will break up the flow. So it was a comment that's been echoed by several neighbours, and just wanted to reiterate it again today, that our house should be the transition from condos into single-family homes on Westminster. So I just wanted to mention that. And thank you for allowing me to speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
We have one hand raised. That will be Marcy Kerr. We'll bring her on in a moment.
Good evening, Mayor Pandeleon, members of the City Council, and city staff. This is Marcy Kerr, and I'm the Executive Director of the Lake Forest Preservation Foundation and a longtime Lake Forest resident. The Lake Forest Preservation Foundation believes that the current proposal of the Lake McKinley Road redevelopment Phase 3 plan is still unsuitable for the location. While we appreciated the proposed third building is now being planned at 2 stories, we have continuing concerns about the building mass and its relationship to the neighborhood. And we stand behind the Plan Commission, who has twice voted in opposition of the proposed zoning changes and special use permit. We have consistently encouraged re-examination of the Phase 3 design to be more consistent with the original master plan concept for the site, and to consider the development in the larger context of our nationally significant library's proposed expansion and site constraints. Thank you very much for your time and considerations. Good evening.
Thank you, Marcy. Do we have other callers or hands raised?
We have one more hand raised, and that is Rami Lopat. We'll bring her on in a moment.
Thank you, City Council. This is Rami Lopat calling. I want to say that the Plan Commission and the Historic Preservation Commission are not jumbled at all in discerning the issues in this very long case. They were very clear. In fact, Ms. Cerniak just quoted to you a few minutes ago what they said. She said they determined that the petition is not consistent with the standards for a special use permit. The same goes for the zoning change. There was nothing vague. There was nothing arbitrary. The City Council sent them back to look at all the standards, and they did so laboriously. Again, they were not jumbled. They were very clear. The building is too big. It's too wide. It is not an appropriate transition between a single family to its west and single families to its east in the East Lake Forest Historic District. I hope that you will vote with our volunteer commissions, support them and their decision. It was a very hard won decision. They worked it. They spent so much time deliberating for us and for the neighbors and for the City Council. Let them do their work. Please support them. It's critical, it's crucial. Thank you very much for your time. I hope we do not have to revisit this again.
Thank you.
We have a caller on the line.
Thank you.
Caller, if you could please state your name and proceed with your comments.
Hi there. My name is Ellie Notley, and I live at 150 Atteridge Road. I'm also a small business owner, and I run my business out of a property on Scott Street. And I apologize in advance. I don't have a prepared statement because I was totally unaware that this meeting was even happening tonight until it was brought to my attention at dinner time. And I think part of my frustration of this whole conversation is that there seems to be a lot of non-communication to the general public about the conversation as a whole. And I feel frustrated as a resident and a business owner that these conversations seem to be hushed. I am calling to reiterate that I've heard lots of statements tonight that I believe in wholeheartedly, and I would very much like the City Council to honor and respect our Plan Commission, who has opposed this twice, as we know, and to listen to the residents and the community members who are very close to the scenario and very clearly are opposed to rezoning, special use permits, and the project in general. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have anybody else?
Mr. Mayor, we don't have any other callers at this time.
There are no additional hands raised at this time.
Okay. In that case, I will bring it back to the City Council for final comments, and then let's try to make a decision here.
Mayor,
Weber.
I'm sorry, Lee, may I just ask, do you want to proceed with comments in any particular order?
No.
Okay,
I mean,
fine.
the way we've always done it is hands up, so, or similar. So Alderman Weber had her hands up first, so
She did.
call on her.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just first of all, I want to thank all the public for all their comments, both live tonight and the emails we've received. Yes, this meeting is after Easter weekend. I certainly understand, as volunteers in the position that I sit in, have spent a lot of time deliberating and contemplating and reviewing and researching. And I want to reiterate that this is not an easy decision, I don't think, for anyone, particularly not for myself. And I appreciate all the comments and the staff comments. And so thank you for all of that. I just wanted to follow up with Kathy. There was one comment that we heard tonight that was in regards to we're approving the specs of the building. And from what I understand, that we are not looking at that. We're looking at the zoning, and this is going to HPC depending on how the council chooses to address this tonight. And so the design aspects of the building is not purview to our decision-making. Is that correct?
That's correct. If you choose to approve this, this would be directed to the Historic Preservation for review based on their 17 standards.
Thank you.
Sorry, Alderman Karas?
Okay, I do have some prepared comments, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
On February 2nd, when the third phase of the McKinley project was last on our council's agenda, I said we balance two duties as council members. We must judge and make decisions in the best long-term interests of the city, Lake Forest, and support and hear the concerns raised by residents in our respective wards. The third phase of the McKinley project epitomizes for me the demands of both of these responsibilities, and I take both seriously and weigh them equally. This project at face value has a good deal of merit. It meets numerous objectives council members consider when evaluating the purpose and quality of a new development. The architect and developer are longtime Lake Forest residents and have designed and completed numerous high-end residential properties in town. They bring their reputation, integrity, and expertise to every project. The current Phase 3 proposal, in my judgment, would enhance, even beautify the space on which it would be constructed. Further, it satisfies a growing demand for high-quality, easy living residences for older residents who wish to remain in Lake Forest. The units would generate tax revenue for the city, and more residences close to our central business district would support retail and dining businesses. But this project and the issues it raises is not that clear cut. Like my colleagues on this council, I've read and reread the history of the project, beginning with the master plan, as well as the many documents prepared on this subject. I've reviewed the Plan Commission's and the Historical Preservation Commission's meeting minutes, and I've read all of the emails and oral testimony received from Lake Forest residents. Before us is a good proposal, and I credit and thank Todd Altunian and Peter Whitmer for revisiting this third phase structure in response to feedback from the Plan Commission and the community. And I'd also like to acknowledge Kathy Cerniak, who has done a great deal, put a lot of thought, and has said throughout this process, at the outset with the research, the triangle research, the research triangle, and the master planning, that let's think bigger. And I think it was really, really thoughtful to think through transitioning this side of McKinley from office buildings to residential buildings. So I really want to commend her for having that foresight. Yet, because this proposal is before us tonight, does that indicate that it is the very best possible proposal and use for this real estate in our historic residential district? The answer is I'm not certain. This is a proposal for a development in a neighborhood, and I value the views of those living in it. Is it not incumbent upon us as a city to carefully explore every potential idea before we arrive with certainty at the best possible use for this place and this space, in this historic residential district? Finally, as I previously publicly stated, I have enormous trust in our process and have confidence in the members of the Plan Commission who diligently researched and reviewed this proposal and ultimately voted against a zone change. For these reasons, I will vote to deny the requested zone change and special use permit.
Thank you. Other comments? Okay, Alderman Rummel. You're muted.
This is a tough decision, and I believe all of my fellow aldermen have done extensive research on this, listened to Plan Commission meetings, listened to HPC meetings, reviewed special use permit requirements, reviewed the LaSalle Sinclair requirements, looked at various plans, looked at how this sits on this particular site, reviewed the original master plan document. We've been struggling with this for a while now. But I have to say, I have to give great deference to the findings of the Plan Commission. They looked at this, they did what we asked. I was one who was very specific about saying, when you consider this, please look at the LaSalle factors. Please look at our special use permit and give us some findings based on those criteria. And I thought the last meeting was an heroic effort to do that and apply those specific criteria to this plan. And at that meeting, they considered all of those criteria. And then I look at Kathy's write-up, which I think beautifully encapsulated their discussion. They set forth in that meeting, and Kathy listed them in our write-up, 14 specific areas of concern on this petition, 14, which were well articulated. In particular, I would focus on certain provisions of our city's special use permit. They must show that the use will not substantially diminish and impair property values within the neighborhood. And let's all focus also on the fact that the burden is on the developer. And I think maybe we've lost some of that. The burden is on the developer to show that it will be an asset to that community, that it won't diminish property values. The burden is not on the homeowners to come forward and say, I've had an appraisal and an opinion that says that this will diminish my property values. The burden is on the developer, and while I believe that they have done a wonderful job in changing the plans from time to time, I'm not sure that it has materially changed the development. It's still a huge building on a small piece of land. It's still a large condominium building next to residential buildings on both sides, both the Gray House and the beautiful historic homes in the Historic Preservation District. I could look at this, the original plan is set forth, and they treated this city property differently from the properties on McKinley. It was really the McKinley properties that were addressed in the master plan, most specifically saying that those should be multifamily and condominium buildings were good. They really didn't directly address the city property other than in the last paragraphs when they say it should be incorporated into this general redevelopment area. And then it says, consider the use of the city property or some portion of it to improve circulation on the library site, to provide overflow parking, and to provide green space to soften and buffer the north side of the library. Meaningful green space. I'm not sure we have meaningful green space in here yet. And I'm not sure that this is something that or as I said earlier, that we've really addressed the massing and the site plan on this particular development. And I'm not sure that it buffers between this new building and the existing uses. I don't see this as a transitional building. It really looks to me pretty much the same as the buildings that face McKinley. It may be lower by a story, but I still think it's a massive building on a small lot. I think it's like fitting 100 pounds of potatoes into a 5-pound bag. It's a small, narrow lot. And so now we're jumping through hoops and rezoning a portion of a parcel in order to make something fit. And I have to ask myself, for what purpose? Can't we go back and design something better for this particular site? And I think that was the overall message of the Plan Commission and also of the HPC meetings. They continue to say size and massing and compatibility with the neighboring homes on the Westminster streetscape. So merely reducing this structure by one floor and expanding the footprint, to me, doesn't address these concerns. So I don't think sending this to the HPC at this point can fix the size and massing problems. I think it needs to be reworked, and a better transition needs to be designed that will fit better into this historic district and complement the Westminster streetscape. I just don't think it's there yet. So I would also vote to uphold the Plan Commission's denial of the petition at this point.
Okay. Other comments? Alderman Preschlack?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I was going to go. All these comments, you want to start with saying thank you first. And I tend not to prepare my remarks for these types of deliberations because I think it's really important to to be open to what our colleagues are saying and what the public says. So I really appreciate what all the colleagues on the council have communicated and all the callers. And first, we just want to thank the Plan Commission for all their hard work in sending us back a full recommendation on the project. I know you've worked hard on it. I'd also like to thank the neighbors and everybody else in the community that's provided input on the project over the last 18 months. And I'd also like to thank the petitioners. You know, there's been a lot of work done on the part of the petitioner to go through the process and to change the plans to accommodate, you know, community feedback. And I think that's really at the heart of this. You know, as a city council, we're called to do what's in the best long-term interest of the community, and that is to manage all stakeholders. And also we're kind of keepers of a community development process that works. And that's really the last thank you is to Kathy, who's kind of charging that effort up. And it's been a lot of work, so I really, really appreciate it. The complete package really allows us to look at the pros and cons of the project in its entirety. And, you know, we have to consider the impact to the neighbors, the overall historic district. You know, as aldermen, we are fiduciaries. We do have to think about the city finances and also the benefits accrued by this potential project to current and future residents. And also, as we started this meeting, the contribution to the future vibrancy of our downtown district and our city in general. And so that's no easy task. I mean, and we're volunteers here on the city council. And it's really helpful for us to have backgrounds on these boards and commissions, because we really are trying to do what's in the best long-term interests of the community and trying to balance these multi-stakeholders. And, you know, I think if anybody, I think all of us really care about the community, obviously through our service, but we're very sensitive to the impact of the neighbors. I mean, I can't say that enough. I mean, I grew up on Westminster. You know, everybody has been at the site. You know, I was on the HPC for 6 years. I care very, very much, and I know all my colleagues care very much about our community and the historic district. You know, but sometimes balancing all these stakeholders will not get the answer that the adjacent neighbors want for a potential project. And so as I thought about this, you know, I just started thinking about, well, okay, so what's the case for denying the petition and supporting the plan recommendation? And a lot of the comments helped me think through this on the call tonight. You know, the first is that, look, the Plan Commission rejected, and so you should. I mean, they're the experts, and you guys should defer to them. You know, unfortunately, that's not really how it works. It's a recommending body. The buck stops with us. We're the elected officials that have to make the tough decisions to balance the multi-stakeholders. I have good friends that live near the property. I go to the community church across the street. I grew up in the town, but as an alderman, I have to think long-term about what's in the best interest of our central district, our city finances, our historic district, and the impact to the neighbors. And I can't just cherry pick one and decide because it's convenient and easy for me politically. Hopefully, you know, I'll share my point of view and people will respect it. The second reason to say kind of no to the petition or to support the Plan Commission is that the historic district will deteriorate if we approve the zoning. And, you know, I can't say this enough. I mean, having spent 6 years on the HPC, we look at every single petition one at a time as an architectural review board to maintain the streetscape and the design elements that make our city special. And if we do approve the zoning request to enable a better project in this lot, that does not mean that our historic district is at risk. I actually think of it the opposite direction. It forces us to move forward and think critically about the future of our city and the vibrancy of it and reaffirm our principles. Because if we say no to everything, then historic preservation ultimately down the road is gonna be sacrificed because we won't be in the same position financially or strategically to say no, and then things come in bunches. So I just think our community development process and the HPC process works, and please just know that it's one petition at a time. I guess the last couple points to say no, and I've heard it from our colleagues, it's too big, it's wide, the massing doesn't make sense. And I'm really confident being on the HPC that if we approve or overturn the Plan Commission, that the HPC can adjudicate these issues. And I actually thought the screening and the transition on the images that we saw tonight looked pretty good. And I think it goes to the HPC and they're going to fine tune it. But I really have confidence that the issues that Alderman Rummel and others have raised is that's what the HPC exists for. I spent 6 years on it and we addressed those issues. And I really think this is a bigger picture kind of on the land issue. The other tendency is, as a person, is to say, well, let's just wait and hope for something better. Or I've heard also, well, let's make it green space. And as an alderman that does have fiduciary responsibility, I just don't have the luxury of waiting. I mean, this petition is in front of us. It's consistent with the master plan. I think it is an appropriate decision to support the zoning. And I really believe that we can make this a positive thing when it's all said and done for our community long-term. Now, I'm very sensitive to the issues on construction and all the things that happen with these projects. I'm very sympathetic to the neighbors on those issues. So I do want to just make sure that if this does go forward, that those issues are addressed. And I think when it's all said and done, our charter, big picture, is to make the tough decisions for what's in the best long-term interest of our community 10, 20, 30 years out. And I think this project is the best use for this site on a number of fronts, and I'm in support of it. And I would be supportive to deny the recommendation of the Plan Commission and to move forward with the project and to get it to the HPC for further refinement.
Thank you. Alderman Notes?
Well, Jim, I honestly could not have said it any better. To save everyone belaboring the same points, I thoroughly agree. Having sat on zoning board and building review board, I have the highest degree of confidence in our advisory boards to come up with a plan that really works with the surrounding neighbors and needs and streetscapes. The community's master plan is a dynamic living document that takes into account an ever-changing world. And certainly we're all, as you've noted, City Council is responsible for taking into account a lot of different aspects of a particular project that a specific commission or board is focused on elements of. I think the petitioner has gone to great lengths to come up with an alternative design that I think makes terrific strides to help balance those needs around their among their neighbors. And I fully, as I did the last time this came before us, fully support the rezoning that's necessary to help ensure that adequate buffers and minimizing the impact on the neighbors is there, and put it back on the various boards and commissions who will be reviewing this going forward to help make sure that that plan is as refined and cohesive as possible. Thank you.
Alderman Bushman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think, listening to the comments, it just reconfirms the fact that we have a very difficult issue here. And we have spent a lot of time going through a lot of material, but you still have to come back and ask the question, do we have an appropriate transition here? And, I recognize that, we have a 4-2 vote from the Plan Commission, and we should obviously, give due deference to their analysis, which I thought was very thorough. But yet to me, we're still missing a piece here before you can solve something as complex as this. And I recognize the standards under the SUP include some that say, whether it substantially diminishes or impair property values, whether it negatively affects the overall character of the area, whether it's incompatible in appearance so as to cause substantial depreciation in property value. Those are the SUP standards. But let's talk a little bit about the HPC standards, because sometimes there's an indication that they don't overlap somehow, or they're not relevant to the question that we have before us. And if you look at the HPC standards, the 17 of them, the overriding consideration that they're asked to look at is to apply to a new construction how it's visually compatible with properties to which it is visually related. How does it look? And here, it goes into more detail in terms of the breakout as to what are they be looking at for visual compatibility. Height, proportion of the front facade, rhythm of the spacing and structure of the street, the open spacing, not only the appearance of the front facade, but the front elevation, its materials, and also there's a reference there to scale, size, and mass. I'm thinking, recognizing the difficulty and the laborious process we've had to get to where we are today, shouldn't we give it the chance to take it before the HPC, let the HPC work with the developer, to the extent they have concerns on the areas within their purview, have an interaction with the developer and see what comes back. With that, feedback, to me, we will have a more total picture to look at the appropriateness of this transition development. And with that information, and I think there are ways of giving it direction to make it easier, just like historically we've done that, just like giving directions back to the Plan Commission on the zoning issue. We can give them direction so that they can stay focused within the purview of advising on visual compatibility. And to see what they can do with the developer on that issue. Now, I'm not, at this juncture, ready to reverse the Plan Commission. I think that would be premature. I don't think it's warranted, but I am desirous of trying to help the developer put something together that really does work.
Thank you. Other comments? Alderman Gashgarian, do you have anything you'd like to say?
I just want to keep this very brief. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to my colleagues for your thoughts. I think somebody said earlier that we've actually all spent a lot of time on this, and it's not an easy decision, and I think we all recognize that. And special thanks to the residents who have called in, because it's an indication of how much we care about the community. My thoughts tend to flow along the path of when this first came before us, one of my colleagues said to me, I'd really like to find the perfect solution. And honestly, I don't think there is a perfect solution. This may be a world of compromise that we live in. And the fact that there isn't a perfect solution, I don't want good to be the enemy of perfect. And I think what we do have before us is a good solution. I personally, my own experience is I have sat on the PPL for the last two plus years, and I have seen 3 iterations moving forward. And I feel like if we accept a recommendation from plan, you know, it's not going to be 2 steps back, it's going to be 3 or 4. And I think, you know, the timeliness of this is such that, you know, it's time for us to make a decision. And really, you know, our plans, our boards and commissions are advisory, and they do put in a tremendous amount of time. And Ray, to your point, I think whenever we can, we should be very differential. But to me, I see this as the right approach in terms of rejecting a recommendation from plan. I think it would allow us to move forward in a positive manner, and then, you know, focus in on some of those aspects that would directly impact what the neighbors would see and how they feel about it. But again, you know, echoing Alderman Preschlack's view, Jim, I made you doctor. You know, we're acting as fiduciaries for the city and really looking at the best long-term decisions for the city as a whole. And I think that's something that we really have to consider. And it's difficult to do when we have friends and neighbors who are speaking in opposition, but we've got to try and step back from that and say, all right, but what will be the best thing? How are we going to leave this place better off 5, 10, 20 years from now? And therefore, I'm in support of rejecting plan's recommendation. You know, it's not easy, but I think it's time for us to make a decision, and you know, that time is now. And that's really all. One last thing, though, Mr. Mayor, I do want to apologize to my colleagues. I apologize to you. You know, I spoke out and objected to somebody using the term despicable. And I probably should have just sat there and listened to it, but there's nothing about any of you that is anything other than honorable. And so my objections, although it may have been very passionate, it was in defense of who you are as people, and quite honestly, who our staff is also. And sometimes I have to temper my response, but I apologize if I threw you off by that, but I can't sit there and listen to that, because I think you are all people whose heart is in the right places, and we may or may not agree on everything, but I'm going to defend your opinions and how you move forward, regardless of how we proceed. So please accept my apology. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. I guess I'd like to clarify one thing here, just so we all understand process-wise where this goes, based on the comments we've heard so far. And Kathy, Julie, correct me if I'm wrong here, but if we accept the recommendation of the Plan Commission through whatever kind of a motion does that, essentially the project, you know, goes back to ground zero, right? I mean, we go back to some point of origination. If we are to overturn the Plan Commission's recommendation, then the project lives to see the HPC's input. So if I'm judging the sequence of events correctly here, we would in some respects be putting the Plan Commission in the position of the HPC and taking the HPC out of the picture. Is that correct?
So I can jump into, and it might be simpler to think about this instead of thinking of it as if you reject plan, you're approving the project, and if you take their recommendation, to look at this as you are the final decision makers. So what's before you are 2 ordinances, one to rezone the property and one to grant the special use and the planned development. Those are the 2 items before you. Certainly you can vote yes and approve, or you can vote no and disapprove. I think it might be simpler to look at it that way. As you said, Mayor, if the council approves both ordinances, then the next step will be to go to HPC. If you don't approve the ordinances, then the project is not approved. There's nothing to send. If the applicant doesn't get the zoning entitlements, there's nothing to send to HPC to review.
Thank you.
Can I follow up on that? You know, we've heard from several aldermen that, you know, they would like to see this plan revised. I think that everybody has sort of been unanimous in that. Whether they get there by giving it to the HPC now or rejecting the plan and allowing the petitioner to come back at a later date. But what gave me a little pause, City Attorney, was the final paragraph H in the special use permit of the cities that says that no application for a special use permit which has been denied wholly or partly by the city council shall be resubmitted for a period of 1 year. Would it be possible to waive that provision?
You're talking about provision in the city code, not the approval ordinance.
Correct.
So the way those, and these are very common provisions in codes, the way that works is that an applicant cannot, if a project is denied, a special use is denied, they cannot bring back that same application again. It avoids having the plan commission and the city council have to continue to see and decide the same application. However, an applicant can certainly modify their plan and bring in a new plan. That's a different issue.
Thank you for that clarification. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions from the council? Well, based on what the city attorney just said, I'm not exactly sure what to suggest for a motion here. Perhaps I should ask for a motion to approve the special use permit and the zone change, or would that have to be in two separate? That would have to be two separate motions, right?
We would usually do them separately, yes.
Well, first I would offer the opportunity to have a motion to approve the requested zone change.
So move.
Seconded.
Okay, roll call vote.
Alderman Morris has recused himself. Alderman Karas?
Nay.
Alderman Rummel?
Nay.
Alderman Notes?
Aye.
I'm sorry, I can't.
Support.
Thank you. Alderman Preschlack?
Aye.
Alderman Gashgarian?
Aye.
Alderman Bushman?
Nay.
Alderman Weber?
Aye.
I cannot hear you, Alderman Weber.
In support.
In support. Okay, thank you. 4 nays. I'm sorry, 4 yeas, 3 nays, and then I'm going to ask the city attorney if I need a further vote.
Yes, so an ordinance requires 5 votes. Because half of the aldermen have voted in favor of this, it does trigger the provision in state law and in the city code for the mayor to vote if he chooses.
I will choose to vote here. I want to thank a lot of hard work by the Plan Commission, having sat on the Plan Commission and chaired it for almost 6 years. I realize how difficult that job can be. We've certainly heard from the public and the neighbors around the building or around the project. I personally think that this is a good project that once through the design review by the HPC will be even better. And so in my opinion, it should have the opportunity to be reviewed and commented on and evaluated by the HPC. We should not take that out of their hands. And therefore I vote in support of the zone change.
5 yea, 3 nay, motion carries.
Thank you. Next, I would entertain a motion to approve the special use permit.
So move.
Seconded.
Alderman Morris has recused himself. Alderman Karas?
Nay.
Alderman Rummel?
Nay.
Alderman Notes,
Aye.
Alderman Preschlack,
Aye.
Alderman Gashgarian,
Aye.
Alderman Bushman,
Nay.
Alderman Weber.
Aye.
Once again, I'm going to call on the city attorney. I have 4 yeas and 3 nays. Do we require a mayor's vote?
It doesn't require the mayor to vote. He can choose to vote in this situation, yes.
I will choose to vote here. I will also vote in favor of the special use permit. Again, I think this project accomplishes an awful lot of what we have set out to do here in this community. And it's well designed. We've got a cooperative and capable developer. And the HPC deserves to have their time to make this project even better. So I vote in favor of the special use permit.
Thank you.
May I raise a question, a point of order, just for clarification? Attorney Tappendorf, I have been reading your handbook on zoning administration, and there is a paragraph in there, and I quote, that says, if the Plan Commission does not recommend the proposed special use, it may only be approved by a majority of all aldermen, commissioners, or trustees of the municipality then holding office. Then there's a clause that says the municipality may establish by ordinance a requirement that any proposed special use not receiving the approval of the commission be held, that held the public hearing require a 2/3 majority of all aldermen. But then it says, under either procedure, the mayor does not vote.
Yes, and that is true for non-home rule municipalities. And there are a number of cases on this issue on whether or not a home rule municipality is subject to the Zoning Enabling Act, which is what that language is citing. And the answer is no. So the city council could have established its own local rules for a special vote, but it did not. So the default rules for approving an ordinance would apply in this situation.
Thank you for the clarification.
Could I ask 2 clarifying questions also? First, was this vote on first reading that there still be a second reading, or was there a waiver that this is a final vote?
Well, I'm not sure the motion did not include specific language that this was waiving first reading, but we could then do that. That would require another vote.
For the record, it should be clear. The second thing too is on the zoning change, is the vote to make the zoning change now in effect, that regardless of what happens with the HPC and the certificate of appropriateness, including, let's say it's denied, that the strip of land would still be rezoned in light of the ordinance being approved?
Yes, Alderman Bushman, correct. So the zoning entitlements are not conditioned upon HPC approval or city council approval of an appeal. However, any issuance of a permit for construction or development of this property by code requires HPC or city council approval. There are provisions in the zoning code for an expiration or revocation of either rezonings or special uses where the development or the use has not been established in a certain time. So in a situation where the HPC, let's say, denied the building, the design criteria, based on the design criteria, and if it came to the city council and the city council did not approve the appeal, so did not overturn, and so there was no design approval, the applicant could submit redesigns and go through that process. But after a certain amount of time, either a year or a year and a half, depending on the type of use, then those approvals terminate. They can be revoked because no development has happened and no use has been established. So they don't sit out there forever, I think is what you were asking about.
The ordinance and the rezoning would occur. Okay, I think I understand.
So actually, I believe then the motion that we just voted on was not clear as to whether this was first reading or final approval. So I think I would entertain another motion that we grant final reading, or I'm sorry, final approval of the zone change.
So moved. Seconded.
Alderman Morris has recused himself. Alderman Karas,
Nay.
Alderman Rommel,
Nay.
Alderman Noakes,
Aye.
Alderman Preschlack,
Aye.
Alderman Kashgarian,
Aye.
Alderman Bushman,
Nay.
Alderman Weber.
Aye.
Okay. And then I will cast a positive vote.
5 yay, 3 nay, motion carries.
And now a similar motion with respect to the special use permit.
So moved for final approval.
Seconded.
Alderman Morris has recused himself. Alderman Karas,
Nay.
Alderman Rommel,
Nay.
Alderman Noakes,
Aye.
Alderman Preschlack,
Aye.
Alderman Kashgarian,
Aye.
Alderman Bushman,
Nay.
Alderman Weber.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, would you like to exercise your right and vote on this?
Yes, I vote aye.
5 yay, 3 nay, motion carries.
Okay. Well, the HPC will have the opportunity to look at this, and we will get to see it again. I'd like to reiterate for a moment, this is a difficult process. It's, I think in the long run, a lot of the concerns that have been expressed by neighbors and people far and wide will prove to have been unfounded. We had similar kinds of comments about Kelmscott Park, property value diminution, bringing in undesirable people into the community, all kinds of things that turned out not to happen, and we've ended up with a stellar project, and I suspect this will be the same. We hear everybody, we listen to everybody, we appreciate their input, we appreciate the hard work of the Plan Commission, HPC, the Zoning Board, all of our boards and commissions, and being a veteran of several of them and lots of other various ad hoc committees, I know that it's particularly thankless at times, and this is in no way a repudiation of anything that the Plan Commission has done. They did their best job. They worked within their purview, and this is a situation, in my opinion, that goes beyond the purview of really any of our boards and commissions, and involves broader issues of the direction and long-term success of our community. So thanks everybody for their input, and we will be back again with recommendations from the HPC. With that,
Mayor, just to clarify, and Director Zerniak can probably explain this better than I can. The HPC is a final decision maker, so their decision would be final. It would only be if the HPC were to deny the application that the developer could appeal it to the City Council.
I misspoke there.
That's fine. I just wanted to clarify that for the public.
The next item on our agenda is comments by council members. Anybody in the council have yes, Alderman Weber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick reminder for everybody who has not casted their vote in the municipal election. That is tomorrow, and I do encourage everyone to be educated and cast your right to vote.
Thank you. That's a good reminder. It's an important day. Alderman Rummel.
Yeah, switching gears a little bit to something that's not quite as ponderous as what we've been discussing for the past several hours. I want to remind aldermen to hopefully sign up for the beach cleanup that the city is co-sponsoring with a number of environmental organizations throughout the city. It's happening on Saturday, April 17th. I know you were sent specific email on this, and I'm just calling your attention to it. Please reply yay or nay, or sign up so that we can get you down to the beach, because we are limiting the number of people down there because of COVID restrictions. So hopefully you can all join us and bring family members down there as well to help us.
I think if you didn't limit it to, is that me?
That's you.
Is that better? I'm sorry, I don't know what happened there, but if you didn't limit it to COVID restrictions, I'm afraid you'd have one piece of trash for every person, and then there'd be a limit, because there'd be so many people down there, you'd run out of trash. So,
I think you may have a point. We have had an overwhelming response to this. And so thank you so much to residents for enthusiastically embracing this initiative, from really originated through the Environmental Sustainability Committee. And so it just shows how important these things are to our community. And on the same note, please look, Mike Strong wanted me to remind everyone that we will be sending out a survey to the council from the Environmental Sustainability Committee. We're trying to establish priorities for some issues going forward, and we want your input, so that will help us prioritize which issues we should be addressing now at the committee level to bring forward. I think it makes a lot of sense. So look for that in the future. And again, thank you in advance for taking the time to fill that out and give us your input, because as Alderman Gashgarian stated, I think all of us have the utmost respect for the opinions of our colleagues on this council. And even though we're not unanimous tonight, thank you so much to everybody for their thoughtful deliberations on this.
thank you. Any other comments? Any other comments? Okay. One thing I'd like to mention, it may be a little premature, but it's, I think, a very important initiative. Our staff, led by Mike Strong and some others, has been working with Jewel Osco, with the county, and with the vaccine buddies to try to establish a sort of mass vaccination site here in Lake Forest sometime in the next couple of weeks. I know it's fluid. We may only have 48 or 72 hours notice, but we've had a significant issue with some of our seniors who are homebound not being comfortable or willing to leave town to get a vaccine. And it's been a significant roadblock for the vaccine buddies. And the hope is that that by doing something right here in town, we can encourage those people and others and speed up the vaccination process. So keep your eyes peeled for that. It's something that I think is of major significance. And I give, first of all, the vaccine buddy volunteers who started this thing from absolute scratch on their own, and has now become a thing all over the country. And also Mike Strong and the staff and City Manager Wisha, who have worked very hard to make this happen. So it's not, we don't have a schedule yet, but I think we will, and we'll publicize it to the greatest extent possible when it does happen. So with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
George?